Welcome, welcome to today's episode of Dial M for Mac. And here we've got one of my favorites, the sequel to John Dies at the End. This book is indeed full of spiders. Seriously, dude, don't touch it. Alright. We're in the opening, the prelude, as it were, to Spooktember, and I got so much spooky stuff I want to do, including reading books, playing scary games, playing scary themed games, even if they're not really scary, and doing drawings and having a good time. I really want September and October to be fun months. So, we're going to lead in a little bit early. I'm not in my Halloween costume yet, but we're going to start reading spooky stories. So, late night spooky story number 1. Last year, hi cat, I know what time it is. I'm starting to read. The book is full of spiders. It is. But yeah, it's, what was I saying? I was saying, and your cat has zoomies. Uh-oh. That would make sleeping a little hard. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, I was saying that I read the first John Dies at the End for the stream last year for Halloween. And I really... Or did I read it for Halloween, or did I read it for... Yeah, I did. I think I read it for Halloween. Anyway, but I want to read this one and the next one, and then there's a fourth one that just came out that I really want to read. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get through all the books in time. The fourth one may stretch into November, but we'll see, because I'm gonna read a couple times a week. But we're starting out. This book is full of spiders. Warning. The following account contains frank descriptions of monsters and male nudity. This book is full of spiders. Prologue. You know how sometimes, when you're drifting off to sleep, you feel that jolt, like you were falling and caught yourself at the last second? It's nothing to be concerned about. It's usually just the parasite adjusting its grip. I guess I should explain that a little further, but it'll take a while, and you have to promise not to get mad. My name is David Wong. By the way, it's on the cover. If you don't know who I am, that's perfect. That means you didn't read the previous book in the saga, which, to be frank, doesn't paint me in the best light. No, don't go read it now. It's better if we get a fresh start. So, hello, stranger. I'm pleased to have this fresh opportunity to try to convince you that I'm not a shithead. Just skip the next paragraph. If you do know who I am, presumably because you read the previous book, I know what you're thinking, and in response, I can only say, no, fuck you! Stop sending me hate mail! Please note that all correspondence regarding the class action lawsuit resulting from the publication of that book should be directed to the publisher's legal department, not me. Go find the address yourself, you bunch of greedy fart souls. Now, on with our tale. Note, I apologize for the harsh language above. You'll find that is not typical of me. Epiprologue. So, here's how fucked up this town is. My friend John and I were out celebrating his birthday last summer. At the end of the night, we were good and drunk, and we headed outside of town to go climb up the water tower and piss off of it. This had been John's tradition for the last 20 years. If you do the math, you'll realize that goes back to when he turned 5, which really says more about John's parents than John. This was a special year because they were in the process of tearing down that old water tower to build a new, more modern one, and it didn't look like the new one was going to have the kind of platform that you could piss off of, because this is no longer a world of men. Anyway, it's 2 in the morning, and we're taking turns pissing off the tower, rather than going at the same time, because we weren't raised by wolves. So, it's my turn, and I'm right at that transcendent moment when the long stream of urine connects me and the ground below, when I hear headlights off in the distance. When I see headlights off in the distance. A row of them. Out on the highway, about a quarter mile of cornfield away from where I was pissing. That was enough to get my attention, because that is not a busy stretch of highway at any hour, let alone in the wee hours of the morning on a weekday. As the headlights got closer, I saw they belonged to a row of black military transports. I squinted and said, Are we being invaded? Because I'm too drunk to pull off a Red Dawn. From behind me, John said, "Look at that one in the back." And my pissing immediately stopped because I sure as hell can't go while somebody is talking to me. I found the last set of headlights and saw that they were waving lazily back and forth, the truck swerving out of control. Then, with a faint crunch, the vehicle connected with a telephone pole. The rest of the convoy moved on without it. Before I could even get zipped up, John was already climbing down the ladder, over my slurred protests. He managed to somehow not tumble off and break his neck, and jumped into my rusting old Ford Bronco. I followed him down, and barely made it to the passenger seat before we were speeding down the lane, rows of corn whipping past, John with the Bronco in stealth mode with the headlights off. We found the wrecked truck, which was built like one of the armored cars banks use, only minus any markings. Off the side of the highway, its steaming grill looked like it was caught in the act of trying to eat the wooden pole. We were alone with it. None of the rest of the trucks had doubled back to check on the crash, a fact that at the time I was too intoxicated to find odd. We cautiously approached the vehicle. John went right to the driver's side door, I guess to see if the driver was hurt. He peered into the window, yanked open the door, then just stood there in silence. I said, "What?" Nothing from John. I glanced nervously down the highway and said again, "What? Is he dead?" Again, no answer. I approached and reluctantly peered into the driver's seat. Now it was my turn to stand there slack-jawed, breathing air that stank of leaking antifreeze. My first impression was that the driver's seat was empty, which wouldn't have been that odd. Maybe the driver was dazed and had stumbled out before we arrived. But it wasn't empty. Sitting in the driver's seat was a 6-inch tall plastic G.I. Joe action figure. It was half obscured by the seatbelt, which was clasped around it. John and I stood there trying to puzzle through what we were seeing, the gears in our heads creaking against a thick vodka sludge. Not that it would have made sense in perfect sobriety, either. The driver, crashed his truck into a tree, then before leaving the scene of the accident decided to position a toy in the driver's seat and buckle the seatbelt around it? Why? So the first responders would think the Toy Story universe was real? John pulled the keys from the ignition and closed the door. He glanced around outside, looking for the driver. Nobody in sight. Then he circled around to the back of the truck, to the windowless, locked rear doors. He banged on the door with his fist and said, "Hey, you guys all right in there? Looks like the accident turned the driver into a G.I. Joe." No answer. If we'd been sober, we'd probably have realized that was a great chance that if anybody was inside this sinister, black, unmarked armored vehicle, they'd more likely jump out with guns and kick the shit out of us than thank us for our concern. But that didn't happen, and John immediately went about figuring out which key on the keyring would open the door. After a dozen clumsy attempts, he found one that worked and slowly pulled it open. No one was in the back of the truck. Laying on the floor was a box. It was army olive green, and about the size of a toolbox, or a lunchbox for somebody who always got really hungry at work. It had a simple handle at the top. The sides were ribbed in a way that suggested it was reinforced or armored somehow. There was no visible latch or lock, and in fact there was no obvious place to try to wedge in a crowbar. Across the front, stenciled in yellow spray paint, were a series of markings that looked like Egyptian hieroglyphs. John climbed into the truck and grabbed the box. I clumsily climbed in after him, banging my shin painfully off the bumper on the way, whispering, "John, no, leave it!" Inside, I realized that we weren't alone. The mystery box was being guarded by 6 more G.I. Joe action figures, each carrying a little plastic assault rifle. They were wearing tiny black suits with face masks. I guess more Cobra than G.I. Joe, then. John grabbed the box and jumped out into the night, oblivious to my slurred demands to leave it behind. If you're asking yourself what exactly John expected to find inside that truck, the easy guess would be a shitload of cash. But we're not criminals. If we had found a pile of white bags with big cartoon dollar bill signs on them, we'd have locked up the truck and called the cops. No, the answer is more complicated. John didn't know what he would find inside that truck, which is why he had to open the door. There are 2 kinds of people in the world. The first sees locks and warning signs and says, if they're keeping it locked up so tight, that means it's both dangerous and none of my business. But the second type say, if they want to keep it a secret so bad, then it must be worth seeing. That's John. That is, in fact, the only reason he hasn't moved far away from this fucked up town. If you don't understand what I mean by fucked up, well, I ain't talking about the unemployment rate. This thing with the trucks, it wasn't exactly an isolated incident. 6 centuries ago, the pre-Columbian natives who settled here named this region with a word that in their language translates to the mouth of the shadow. Later, the Iroquois who showed up and inexplicably slaughtered every man, woman, and child in those first tribes renamed it to a word that literally translates to, seriously, fuck this place. When French explorer Jacques Marquet explored the area in 1673, he marked it on his map with a crude drawing of what appeared to be a black blob falling out of Satan's butthole. In 1881, a group of coal miners got trapped when an explosion caused the entrance of the mine to collapse. When rescuers showed up to the mouth of the mine, they found sitting in front of the rubble a coal-dusted kid, the youngest of the miners. His exact greeting to the men was, "Don't dig 'em out. They sent me here to tell you that. Them boys blew it themselves, caved it in on purpose, to keep what they found in there from getting out, so just leave it be. Now you there, with that pickaxe? I'd appreciate it if you go ahead and use that to cave in my skull, same as they did to that mine. Just maybe it'll gouge out that blue eyeball that's staring back at me from inside my own head." Things have only gone downhill since then. Here in this town, 3 friends will stroll into a dark alley, and only 2 will emerge from the other end. Those 2 will have no memory of the third. It's rumored that a year ago, a 5-year-old kid went into surgery to have a brain tumor removed. When the surgeon sawed open his skull, the tumor jumped out, a ball of whipped tentacles that launched itself at the surgeon and burrowed into his eye socket. 2 minutes later, he and 2 nurses lay dead in the OR, their craniums neatly cleaned out from the inside. I say this incident was rumored because at this point in the story, men in suits showed up, flashed off official-looking ID, and took away the bodies. The story in the paper the next day was that everybody died due to an oxygen tank explosion. But John and I know the truth. We know because we were there. We usually are. Tourists show up here because they've heard the town is haunted, but that word does nothing to convey the situation. Infested is better. John and I have made this stuff our hobby, in the way that an especially attractive prisoner makes a hobby out of not getting raped. Jesus, that's a terrible analogy. I apologize. What I'm saying is that it's self-preservation. We didn't choose this. We just have talents that make us the equivalent of that new guy in the cell block who has a slim, hairless body and kind of looks like a woman from behind and has an incredibly realistic tattoo of boobs on his back. He may have no desire at all to even touch a penis, but it's going to happen, even if it's just in the process of frantically slapping them away. Jesus, I'm still talking about this. John, please delete the above paragraph before it goes off to the publisher. So anyway, that's why John looked inside the truck. And that's why he took the box, even though, for all we knew, the contents were worthless, or toxic, or radioactive, or all 3. We did eventually get into the box, and considering what was inside it, they didn't have nearly enough security around the thing. But that story will have to wait for a bit. Oh, and if you're thinking that it was a huge coincidence that the truck happened to crash at the exact time and place where John and I were birthday tower pissing, don't worry, it wasn't. All of this will make sense with time. Or maybe not. Now, let's fast forward to November 3rd, about 48 hours prior to outbreak. "I'm not crazy," I said crazily to my court-appointed therapist. He seemed bored with our session. That usually made me want to act crazy to impress him. Maybe that was his tactic. I thought, maybe I should tell him I'm the only person on Earth who has seen his entire skeleton. Or I could make something up instead. The therapist, whose name I had already forgotten, said, "You believe your role here is to convince me that you're not crazy? Well, you know I'm not here by choice. You don't think you need these sessions. I understand why the judge ordered it. I mean, it's better than jail." He nodded. I guess that was my cue to keep talking. Man, psychiatry seems like a pretty easy job. I said, "A couple months ago, I shot a pizza delivery guy with a crossbow. I was drunk." Pause. Nothing from the doctor. He was in his 50s, but looked like he could still take me in a game of basketball, even though I was half his age. His gray hair was cut like a 1990s-era George Clooney. Type of guy whose life had gone exactly as he'd expected it. I bet he'd never shot a delivery guy with a crossbow even once. I said, "Okay, I wasn't drunk. I'd only had 1 beer. I thought the guy was threatening me and my girlfriend Amy. It was a misunderstanding." He said you accused him of being a monster. It was dark. The neighbors heard you shout to him, and I'm quoting from the police report, "Go back to hell, you unholy abomination, and tell Korok I have a lot more arrows where that came from." Well, that's out of context. So you do believe in monsters? No, of course not. It was a metaphor, or something. He had a nameplate on his desk. Dr. Bob Tennant. Next to it was a bobblehead of a St. Louis Cardinals baseball player. I glanced around the room. Saw he had a leftover Halloween decoration still taped to his window, a cardboard jack-o'-lantern with a cartoon spider crawling out of its mouth. The doctor had only 5 books on the shelf behind him, which I thought was hilarious because I owned more books than that and I wasn't even a doctor. Then I realized they were all written by him. They had long titles like The Madness of Crowds, Decoding the Dynamics of Group Paranoia. And A Person is Smart, People are Stupid, an analysis of mass hysteria and groupthink. Should I be flattered or insulted that I was apparently referred to a world-class expert in the subject of why people believe in stupid shit? He said, "You understand, the court didn't order these sessions because you believe in monsters." Right. They want to make sure I won't shoot anyone else with a crossbow. He laughed. That surprised me. I don't think these guys were always allowed to laugh. They want to make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others. And while I know it's counterintuitive, that process will actually be easier if you don't think of it as a test you have to pass. If I had shot somebody over a girl or stolen a case of beer, I wouldn't be here. I'm here because of the monster thing, because of who I am. Do you want to talk about your beliefs? I shrugged. You know the stories that go around this town? People disappear here. Cops disappear. But I can tell the difference between reality and fantasy. I work. I have a girlfriend. I'm a productive citizen. Well, not productive. I mean, if you add up what I bring to society and what I take out, society probably breaks even. And I'm not crazy. I mean, I know anybody can say that, but a crazy person can't fake sane, right? The whole point of being crazy is that you can't separate crazy ideas from normal ones. So, no. I don't believe the world is full of monsters disguised as people. Or ghosts, or men made of shadows. I don't believe that the name of the town here, where this story takes place, shall remain undisclosed so as not to add to the local tourism traffic, is a howling orgy of nightmares. I fully recognize that all of those are things only a mentally ill person believes. Therefore, I do not believe them. Boom, therapy accomplished. No answer from Dr. Tennant. Fuck him. I'll sit like this forever. I'm great at not talking to people. After a minute or so, I said, "Just to be clear, what's said in the room doesn't leave this room, right? Unless I believe a crime is about to be committed. That's correct. Can I show you something? On my phone, it's a video clip. I recorded it myself. If it's important to you." I pulled out the phone and dug through the menus until I found a 30-second clip I'd recorded about a month ago. I held it up for him to see. It was a nighttime scene, at an all-night burrito stand near my house. Out front was a faded picnic table, a rusted 50-gallon drum of trash can and whiteboard with prices scrawled in dry erase marker. Without a doubt, the best burritos you can possibly get within 6 blocks of my house at 4 in the morning. The grainy shot, my phone's camera wasn't worth a damn in low light, caught the glare of headlights as a black SUV pulled up. Stepping out of it was a young Asian man in a shirt and tie. He casually walked around the tiny orange building, nodding to the kid at the counter. He went to a narrow door in the rear, opened it, and stepped inside. After about 10 seconds, the shot shakily moved towards the door. A hand extended into the frame, my hand, and pulled the door open. Inside were some cardboard boxes with labels like large lids and med paper bags, white, along with a broom and a mop and a bucket. The Asian man was gone. There was no visible exit. The clip ended. I said, "You saw it, right? Guy goes in, guy doesn't come out, guy's not in there. He's not in the burrito stand. He's just gone." "You believe this is evidence of the supernatural?" "I've seen this guy since then, around town. This isn't some burrito shop Bermuda Triangle sucking an innocent passerby. The guy walked right towards it, on purpose, and he came out somewhere else, and I knew he was coming because he did the same thing every night at the same time. You believe there was a secret passage or something of the sort? Not a physical one. There's no hatch in the floor or anything. We checked. No, it's like a wormhole or something. I don't know, but that's not even the point. It's not just that there was a magical burrito door there, or whatever it was. It's that the guy knew what it was and how to use it. There are people like that around town. And you believe these people are dangerous? Oh, Jesus Christ, I am not going to shoot him with a crossbow. How can you not be impressed by this? It's important to you that I believe you. I just realized he was phrasing all of his questions as statements. Wasn't there a character in Alice in Wonderland who did that? Did Alice punch him in the face? Okay. I could have faked the video. You have the option of believing that. And, man, if I could have that option, if I could buy it from you, I'd pay anything. If you told me you'd reach into my brain and turn off my belief in all of this stuff, and in exchange, I just had to let you, say, shoot me in the balls with one of those riot-control beanbag guns, I'd sign the deal right now. But I can't. That must be very frustrating for you. I snorted. I looked down at the floor between my knees. There was a faded brown stain on the carpet. I wondered if a patient had once taken a shit in here in the middle of a session. I ran my hands through my hair and felt my fingers tighten and twist it, pain radiating down my scalp. Stop it, he said. I can see this is upsetting you. We can change the subject if you like. I made myself sit up and take a deep breath. No. This is what we're here to talk about, right? He shrugged. I think it's important to you. Yes, in the way that the salt is important to the slug. He said, It's up to you. I sighed, considered for a few beats, and then said, One time, early in the morning, I was getting ready for work. I go into the bathroom and turned on the shower, but the water just stopped in midair. I don't mean the water hovered there, frozen in time. That would be crazy. No, the spray was pouring down about 12 inches from the nozzle, then spread and splattered as if the stream was breaking against something solid, like an invisible hand was held under the shower head to test the temperature. I stood there outside the shower stall, naked, squinting in dull confusion. Now, I'm not the smartest guy under normal circumstances, but my 6 a.m. brain has an IQ of about 65. I vaguely thought it was some kind of plumbing problem. I stared stupidly at the interrupted umbrella-shaped spray of water, resisting the impulse to reach out and touch the space the water couldn't seem to pass through. Fear was slowly bubbling up into my brain. Hairs stood up on my back. I glanced down, blinking, as if I would find a note explaining all of this taped to my pubic hair. I didn't. Then I heard the spray change, the splattering on the tiles making a different tone. I glanced up and saw that the part of the flow farthest from me slowly returned to normal, and the water shooting past the invisible obstruction in a gentle arc. The unseen thing was passing out of the stream. It wasn't until the spray looked completely normal again that I realized this meant the invisible thing that had been blocking the water was now moving toward me. I jumped back, moving so quickly that I thought the half-open shower curtain had blown back from the wind of my rapid movement. But that wasn't right, because the curtain didn't return to its normal shape right away. It stayed bulged outward, something unseen pushing against it. I backed up against the wall, feeling the towel bar pressing into my back. The shower curtain fell straight again, and now there was nothing in the bathroom but the radiostatic sound of the shatter splattering against tile. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding so hard I was getting dizzy. I slowly put a hand out, tentative, toward the curtain. Through the space the unseen thing had passed. Nothing. I decided to forget about the shower. I cranked off the water, turned toward the door, and I saw something. Or I almost did. Just out of the corner of my eye, a dark shape. A black figure whipping through the doorway just out of sight, like a shadow without the person. I couldn't have seen it for more than 1/10 of a second, but I did see it, now imprinted in my brain from that flash of a glance. The form, black, in the shape of a man, but then becoming formless, like a single drop of dark food coloring before it dissolves in a sink of running water. I had seen it before. I thought I saw something in there. I don't know, probably nothing. I slumped in the chair and crossed my arms. This was a source of anxiety for you, having these beliefs and feeling like you can't talk about them without being dismissed. I stared out of the window at my Bronco rusting in the parking lot, the metal eager to get back to being just dirt. Life was probably easier for it back then. I said, "Who's paying for these sessions again?" "Payment is your responsibility, but we have a sliding scale." "Awesome." He considered for a moment and then said, Would it put you more at ease if I told you that I believe in monsters?" "It might put me at ease, but I can't speak for the people who hand out psychiatrist licenses." "I'll tell you a story. Now, I understand that with your hobbies, people contact you, correct? Believing they have ghosts or demons in their homes." "Sometimes." "And I'm going to make an assumption. If you arrive and tell them that the source of their anxiety is not, in fact, supernatural, they're anything but relieved, correct? Meaning they want the banging in the attic to be a ghost and not a squirrel trapped in the chimney." "Yeah, I guess." "So you see, fear is just another manifestation of insecurity. What humans want most of all is to be right. Even if we're being right about our own doom. If we believe that there are monsters around the next corner, ready to tear us apart, we would literally prefer to be right about the monsters than to be shown to be wrong in the eyes of others and made to look foolish." I didn't answer. I glanced around for a clock. He didn't have one, the bastard. "So, a few years ago, while I was presenting at a conference in Europe, my wife called and insisted that the walls of our laundry room were throbbing. That was the word she used, pulsing, like the wall itself was alive. She described a hum, an energy that she could feel as soon as she walked into the room. I suggested it was a wiring problem. She became, let's just say, agitated at that point. 3 days later, just before I was due to come back, she called again. The problem was getting worse, she said. There was an audible hum now from the wall. She couldn't sleep. She could hear it as soon as she walked in the house. She could feel it, the vibration, like something unnatural was ready to burst forth into our world. So I flew home the next day and found her extremely upset. I understood immediately why my suggestion of a wiring problem was so insulting. This was the sound of something alive, something massive. So even though I was exhausted, jet-lagged, and just completely dead on my feet, I had no other thought than to go out to the garage and get my tools and peel off the siding. Guess what I found?" I didn't answer. "Guess." "I'm not sure I want to know." "Bees. They had built an entire hive in the wall, sprawling from floor to ceiling, tens of thousands of them." His face was lighting up with the telling of his amusing anecdote. Why not? He was getting paid to tell it. "So, I went and put on a hat and gloves and wrapped my wife's scarf around my face and sprayed the hive. I killed them by the thousands. Only later did I realize that the bees are quite valuable, and a local beekeeper actually came and carefully removed the hive itself at no charge. I think he'd have actually paid me if I hadn't killed so many of them at the start." Do you understand?" "Yeah, your wife thought it was a monster. Turned out to just be bees. So my little problem, probably just bees. It's all bees, nothing to worry about." "I'm afraid you misunderstood. That was the day that a very powerful, very dangerous monster turned out to be real. Just ask the bees." 36 hours prior to the outbreak. "Hello." "Oh, hey. Hey, Indigo Radio, thank you for the raid. Welcome in, everybody. How are you doing? How was your stream today?" Welcome in, everybody. We're reading This Book is Full of Spiders by David Wong. We're still early on. If you're familiar with it, he's at the therapist. Welcome in. Welcome in. Oh, let me give you a shout out real quick. Let me see. Indigo Radio _ There we go. Bloop. I still need to fix that so the hearts actually show.
I'm playing with you.
Coming from a drawing stream. Ooh,
We'll stick together.
good choice. We're reading Spooky Story.
How does your wife? I have 2 in electrical, of course. Crimson
Nice.
Wow!
Oh my god! I wish I had taken a screenshot of that. That was so fucking funny. Sorry.
That was a nice kill. Oh man. Well, welcome in everybody. What were y'all doing today? Oh wait, you said you were doing Ark. That's right. It is the sequel to John Dies at the End. It is. Oh, it's one of my favorite series. The 4th one just came out. I'm excited. I'm gonna try to get through 2 and 3 before Halloween so I can read the 3rd one. Oh man. I mean what am I saying? The 4th one. Oh man, welcome in everybody. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Dial M for Mac. I'm the Tentacle VTuber. I do I'm a variety VTuber. I do games, I do art, I do reading streams. There's a 3rd. Yes, the 3rd one is what the hell did I just read? And the 4th one just came out. Oh, thank you for the follow. The 4th one is titled If You're Seeing This Book, or If This Book Exists, You're in the Wrong Universe. I'm super excited to read it. Ow. But yeah, we're on book 2. This book is full of spiders. Oh, thank you for the follow. Let's see. Thank you, Indigo. Thank you, Java Physician. You're now Wigglers. Welcome in. All right, make another sip of my drink, and we'll pick up where we left off. All right, so we're at 36 hours prior to Outbreak. I said, "Can you see me?" The freckled redhead on my laptop screen said, "Yep." Amy Sullivan had her hair in pigtails, which I like, and was wearing a huge, ironic t-shirt with a badly drawn eagle and American flag on it, which I hate. It was like a tent on her. She asked, "How did your therapy go?" Jesus, Amy, you don't want to start a conversation with your boyfriend asking him how his court-ordered therapy went. You have to ease into that. Sorry. Oh yeah, I was in high school when the first one came out. I loved reading it online. I loved reading this one when he started doing it online too. It's very different from the edit that was on his site. What was it? PointlessWasteOfTime.com? Oh man, I think that's been kind of hollowed out and turned into just an advertising for the book at this point. Okay, sorry for the bleh. Oh yeah, it's a physical book. Okay. Let's see. It's a sensitive subject. Okay, forget it. I said, "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" "Yep. Miss me, don't you?" You know I can't function on my own. After a beat and another sip of tea, she said, "Are you going to be alright? Not just with the therapy, but that whole situation? Your roommate isn't around, right?" "No." "Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Everything is quiet," she said. "That scared me that night." I know it did. Nothing had happened like that for a long time. I know. If something like that happens again, I'll shoot it with a crossbow again. I told you that. Did you talk to your therapist about it? Subtle, Amy. Well, I'm curious. How did I find a girl who's worse at conversation than I am? She took a sip from a teacup she pulled off camera. She had to balance the cup with her left wrist. That is, the stump where her left hand should be. She was in a car accident when she was a teenager, before I knew her. The crash took her hand and her parents, and left her with a chronic back pain and an implanted titanium rod in her spine. She refused to get a prosthetic hand because she thought they were creepy, but in my mind, between the titanium spine and a robot hand, she'd be like 10% of the way to a cyborg, an idea that I found more than mildly amusing. Amy and I had met in high school in a special ed classroom for kids with behavior disorders. Neither of us really belonged there. She was there because she had a bad reaction to pain medication and bit a teacher, and I was there due to a misunderstanding. A bully kept fucking with me until I snapped and gouged out his eyes. You know how kids are. On Fairy Tale our Fairy... Yeah. That's a punishment drink. Our fairy tale romance began by us completely ignoring each other for 5 years, during which I only knew her by a crude nickname some asshole had given her. Then one day, John and I were asked a favor to look into her disappearance. It wasn't a big deal. It only took us a couple of days to get to the bottom of it. She had been kidnapped by monsters. Setting aside her tea, she said, "So what's he like? The psychiatrist?" "It's just like you've seen in the movies, Amy. They get you talking and wait for you to announce you've had an epiphany." I thought for a moment, then said, "And the therapist was a she, not a he. She's about 22, busty. She kept turning everything into some kind of sexual innuendo. Looks like she said she believed therapy should be hands-on and grabbed my crotch. Then we porked on the desk for a while and the time was up." I shrugged. "Like I said, it's just like you see in that movie, Anal Therapist 6. She sighed and sipped her tea. "I guess you don't miss me after all." "Wait, were we not supposed to be having sex with other people, Amy? I guess that was never made clear to me, sorry." She didn't answer or laugh, and I said, "Come on, you know if one of us wanted to sleep around, you'd have a way easier time than I would. I'm the crazy guy who sees monsters and shoots delivery people. You're the adorable redhead. You can go down to the guy's floor of the dorm and say, 'I'm a woman, I want to have sex,' and you'd have 20 guys lined up with roses and shit. I'd have to work at it." "Why do guys always say that? It's just as hard for a girl." "That's ridiculous. Every bar is full of guys desperate to get laid and girls desperate to fend off all the horny guys. It's just the way it is. It's biology. It's easier for girls." "That's actually impossible. Heterosexual sex takes one man and one woman. That means guys and girls have the exact same amount of sex. That means there's an equal number of sluts and desperate people on both sides." "That can't be right." She shrugged. "Do the math. And yes, just to settle the issue, I do miss you." "I know. There's nobody here to ruin movies for me." Amy had a superhuman ability to pick out the one flaw in a movie that would make it impossible to ever fully enjoy it again. During a single weekend's George Lucas marathon, she pointed out to me that if Indiana Jones had just stayed home, Raiders of the Lost Ark would have turned out exactly the same way. The Nazis would have opened the Ark and gotten vaporized. Then, during The Empire Strikes Back, she paused the movie when a character referred to Luke's ship as an X-Wing, which is impossible, she said, because there's no way the ship should be called an X-Wing based on it being physically shaped like an English letter X, since an ancient race of people in a distant galaxy would never have seen that letter before. Jesus, I'm making her sound like a bitch. To the webcam window, I said, "How are the classes going? Have you gotten to the part where they teach you to make computer viruses? Because I have people I want to send them to." "If by virus you mean a program that accidentally freezes up your whole operating system when you try to execute it, then I think everything I've coded so far counts as one." "Oh, did you know that you could hack the phone system with a Cap'n Crunch whistle?" Is that like hacker slang or... No, the phone lines back in the 70s did everything by tones. The different frequencies and stuff told the system how to route the calls and all that. So there was a hacker named John Draper who figured out that the little plastic toy whistles that were putting in boxes of Captain Crunch had the same exact frequency and tone as the phone system was using to end charges on a call. He got free long distance for like 2 years just by blowing his toy whistle into the phone every time. Holy shit. I'm gonna try that. See, this is the type of stuff colleges should be teaching. Well, they've updated the phone system since then. Oh. We sat in silence for a moment, then she said, "Give me a second. I'm trying to think of a way to work the conversation back around to your therapy again." I said, "I love you." She said, "I know. Actually, tomorrow's a group session. I'll probably have to wax beforehand." "Gross." "Sorry. Though, maybe I shouldn't talk since I'm sitting here on a webcam without any pants on." I said, "Oh, really? Want to see?" "Yes. Yes, I do." 30 hours prior to outbreak. There exists in this world a spider the size of a dinner plate, a foot wide if you include the legs. It's called the Goliath bird-eating spider, or the Goliath fucking bird-eating spider by those who have actually seen one. It doesn't eat only birds. It mostly eats rats and insects, but they still call it the bird-eating spider, because the fact that it can eat a bird is the most important thing you need to know about it. If you run across one of these things, like in your closet or crawling out of your bowl of soup, the first thing somebody will say is, "Watch it, man! That thing can eat a goddamn bird!" I don't know how they catch the birds. I know the Goliath fucking bird-eating spider can't fly, because if it could, it would have a different name entirely. We would call it Sir, because it would be the dominant species on the planet. None of us will leave the house unless a Goliath fucking bird-eating spider I'm sorry, a Goliath fucking flying bird-eating spider said that it was okay. I've seen one of those things in person, at a zoo when I was in high school. I was 15, my face breaking out in acne and getting fatter by the day, staring open-mouthed at this monster pawing at the glass wall of its cage, big as both of my hands. The guys around me were giggling and punching each other in the arm, and some girl was squealing behind me, but I didn't make a sound. I couldn't. There was nothing but a pane of glass between me and that thing. For months after, I'd watched the dark corners of my bedroom at night, for hairy legs as thick as a finger poking out from behind a stack of comic books and video game magazines. I imagined, no, expected, to find strands of spiderweb as thick as fishing line in my closet, bulging with clumps of half-eaten sparrows, or spider droppings in my shoes, the little turds laced with bits of feather, or piles of pink eggs yoked with baby spiders already the size of golf balls. And even now, 10 years later, and at the age of 25, I still glance between the sheets at night before pushing my legs in, some part of my subconscious still looking for the huge spider crouching in the shadows. I bring this up because the Goliath was the first thing that popped into my mind when I woke up with something in my bed biting my leg. I felt a pinch on my ankle, like digging needles. The Goliath fucking bird-eating spider leapt out of the fog of my sleepy imagination as I flung the blankets aside. It was dark. Lights were off, clock off, everything off. I sat up and squinted down at my leg. Movement, down by the sheets. I swung my leg off the bed, and I could feel the weight of something clinging to my ankle, heavy as a can of beer. A spasm of panic ripped through me. I kicked out with the leg, grunting in the chill air of my dark bedroom, trying to shake off the little biting whatever it was. The thing went flying across the room, passing through a shaft of moonlight spilling in around my blinds. In that brief second, I saw a flash of jointed legs. Lots of legs. And a tail. Armored plates like a lobster. The whole thing was as long as a shoe. Black. What in the name of... The creature that my panicked mind was calling a spider, even though it clearly wasn't an arachnid or any other species native to planet Earth, flew across the bedroom and hit the wall, landing behind a basket of laundry. I bolted up out of the bed, squinting, edging around the room, feeling the wall with my hands. I blinked, trying to get my night vision, scanning for something to use as a weapon. I pawed around at the jumble of objects on my nightstand, saw something jutting out from under a copy of Entertainment Weekly, round and slim. I thought it was maybe the hilt of a knife. I grabbed it and threw it, realizing only after it was airborne that it was my asthma inhaler. I reached again, grabbed for what looked like the heaviest object on the table, a jar of cheese sauce. I spotted movement across the baseboard. I chucked the jar, grunting with the effort. A thud, a tinkle of broken glass. Silence. I grabbed the table lamp, a novelty item that consisted of a naked bulb jutting out of a stained glass sculpture of a turkey. A birthday present from John. I yanked the cord from the wall and raised the turkey by the neck, holding it over my shoulder like a quarterback photographed in mid-throw. The spider, skittered around the floor, out the doorway, and into the living room. It had legs all over it, walking on half a dozen legs with another half dozen sticking up into the air like dreadlocks. Like the thing was made to keep running even on its back. The sight of the thing froze me. That awful, primal, paralyzing terror that only accompanies an encounter with something completely alien. I lowered the lamp and forced myself to take a step forward. I tried to control my breathing. I risked a glance down at my leg and saw a crimson stripe leaking down from the bite. That little bastard. I felt a heat, and then a numbness creeping its way up my leg. I didn't know if the little monster was poisonous, or if it was just the shock of getting bitten. I took 3 steps toward the doorway and had developed a serious limp by the 4th. I slowly peered into the living room. Not quite as dark in here. The street lamps outside spilled half-hearted ribbons of light on the floor, writhing among the shadows of wind-blown tree branches. No sign of the spider. I heard a scratchy rustle from the kitchen tiles to my left and spun on it. It was the dog. Molly stepped sleepily towards me, knee-high reddish shape topped with 2 eyes reflecting bluish moonlight. I caught the faint blur of a wagging tail behind her. She was looking right at me, wondering why I was up, wondering why I smelled like terror sweat, wondering if I had any snacks on me. I glanced toward the front door, 10 feet of carpet between me and it. I had half made up my mind to pack Molly into the car and flee to John's place, then regroup so that the 2 of us could come back here tomorrow with a shotgun and holy water. My feet had never been so bare. Those little naked toes. That spider thing probably looked at those like the ears on a chocolate bunny. Where have I left my shoes? I brandished the turkey lamp and took a shaky step, my bitten leg having fallen asleep. I willed it to hold up from here to the driveway. A scream from behind me. I flinched and spun, then realized it was my phone. John had set my phone's text message ringtone to a sound clip of him screaming, "Text! Shit!" I never figured out how to change it back. I snatched the phone from the coffee table and saw it was a blank message with an attached photo. I opened the image. A man's penis. I quickly closed it. What the hell? The phone sounded again in my hand. A call this time. I answered. "Dave, don't talk. Listen, you have a picture in your inbox. Do not open it. I sent it to the wrong number." Jesus Christ, John, listen to me. Man, you sound out of breath. John, The phone slipped from my fingers, which were suddenly unable to grip it. I took a step toward the fallen phone, then another, and the room started wobbling in front of my eyes, losing my balance. No, you cannot fall. You cannot go down there with that thing. I fell face first on the carpet. My left leg was 50 pounds of dead weight dragging behind me. My right leg was tingling now, terror pumping the poison through my veins with horrible efficiency. I swung an arm around, finding the coffee table. I clawed at it, tried to raise myself. No grip with that hand. Flat on the floor again. I didn't even feel the impact on the shoulder as I landed. "Help! Somebody!" I squealed. I wish I knew the names of my neighbors. "Help!" The last cry ended in a croak. The cell phone screamed again. Mustering every last calorie of energy in my right arm, I reached out for a phone that seemed to be 10 miles away. I got my dead fingers on top of it, then dragged it across the carpet toward my face. It was as heavy as a bag of concrete. Manipulating the hand was like trying to fish a stuffed animal out of one of those claw games at the carnival. I saw that the incoming message was from John. "John!" I screamed at the phone stupidly. I slapped at the buttons with my clumsy carnival claw hand. I fought to lift my head from the floor. The screen changed. An image appeared. Penis. My arm went dead. My head bounced off the floor. Spinal cord totally unplugged now. I was staring across an expanse of carpet, seeing tumbleweeds of dog hair that had gathered under the TV cabinet across the room. Couldn't look away. Didn't even have that much muscle control. Couldn't close my eyes. I could hear, though, and I detected the ever-so-faint rustling of carpet. Many little feet stepping through the fibers. Hard, black-jointed legs shuffled into view. The spider completely filled my field of vision, no more than 6 inches from my eyes. Legs everywhere. A half-dozen of them were coated in nacho cheese sauce. The creature's mouth was as big as mine, surrounded by needle-thin mandibles. 2 lips parted, and I saw with revulsion that it had a pink tongue exactly like a human's. It inched towards my face. The spider was my world, its many glistening black legs extending past both ends of the horizon. I could count the taste buds on its lolling pink tongue, could see the wet ridges from the roof of its mouth. Its carapace glistened with some kind of slime. 2 of its legs were touching my mouth. It tickled. A huge furry nose descended into my field of vision, like the fuzzy snout of God himself. Molly had finally grown curious enough about the situation to wander in from the kitchen. Her nose twitched as she detected the smell of nacho cheese. She licked the spider, discovered that her most ambitious doggy dream had finally come true. Naturally cheese-coated prey. With a snap of her jaws and a quick twist of her head, she ripped 4 of the monster's legs and buckled down hard on the work of chewing them. The spider shrieked with a piercing noise that made my bones vibrate. It sped from view so fast I had no idea what direction it went. 29 hours prior to outbreak. Paralyzed. Was this permanent? I pictured the venom turning my spinal column into mush. Molly glanced at me, quietly judging me for my laziness. She worked over her severed spider legs, realizing there wasn't much meat inside the crunchy outer shell. She settled in and pinned the legs under her front paws, then started carefully licking the cheese off of them. I lay there for an interminable amount of time that in reality was about 1 hour. I eventually felt a tingling across my torso as I sleepily imagined I had landed on an anthill. It was, however, the feeling returning to my body. 20 minutes or so later, I found I could twitch my fingers. Half-hour after that, I was sitting upright on the sofa, cradling my throbbing head in my hands. I devoted all of my mental energy to blocking out any thoughts of what the spider had intended to do by immobilizing my body. Well, the first step would be to lay eggs. Oh, wait, the spider. It could still be here. Shit. 3 seconds later, I was on the porch, peering back through the front door into my own living room. No sign of the spider, but then again, it was pitch dark inside, and I had a streetlight behind me, so all I could see in the little window was a reflection of my own stupid face. My hair looked like I had combed it with an angry cat. I reached for my cell phone, then realized it was still on the floor in the living room. I flung open the door, sprinted in, rolled, grabbed the phone, and sprinted back out, slamming the door behind me. I dialed John. Voicemail. This is John. If you're calling because you found the rest of my guitar, just bring it by the apartment. Sorry about the rug. Leave a message. I didn't. Even on a Thursday night, the man was probably marinated and comatose by now. I glanced around the neighborhood, my nervous breaths barely visible in the November air. Why was mine the only house that didn't have power? I raised the phone but didn't dial. The English language needs a word for that feeling you get when you badly need help, but there is no one who you can call because you're not popular enough to have friends, not rich enough to have employees, and not powerful enough to have lackeys. It's a very distinct cocktail of impotence, loneliness, and a sudden stark assessment of your non-worth to society. Interdment? There was a broom leaning by the front door. I froze when I had used it to knock a dead bird off of the porch. Why did I say I froze? I'm sorry. Let me start that one over. There was a broom leaning on the front door from when I had used it to knock a dead bird off the porch a few days ago. I clutched it in front of me like a spear and pushed through the door. Molly brushed past me in the opposite direction, presumably to find the perfect spot outside my car to take a dump so that I would be sure to step in it the next time I was in a hurry to get to work. I took one step inside, focusing on the floor too. The spider thumped onto my head, twitchy legs tangling in my hair. I dropped the broom and threw my hands up as the monster climbed over my ear and onto my shoulder. Itchy little legs all over my face and neck. I grabbed the spider around the body, rigid legs bending under my hands. I tried to pull it off. I couldn't. The feet were latched on somehow. My shirt and my skin stretched away from my shoulder as I pulled. I heard a screeching like a steam from a teapot and realized it was me. Sharp mandibles filled the view in my right eye. A stab of pain seared through my skull. I lost vision in that eye and thought the bastard had plucked out my eyeball. I let out a scream of rage and grabbed bundles of legs with both hands, ripping them away from the skin. I felt wetness and realized the monster had left one leg behind, the foot still attached to my shoulder. But I was free of the creature now, the unholy thing thrashing around in my hands, twisting its mouth toward me, trying to bite. That freaking tongue, god damn it! I frantically looked around with my one good eye, trying to find a container I could cram the creature into. Laundry basket, bedroom floor. Into the bedroom. I kicked over the plastic bucket, dumping the clothes. I dunked the beast inside and turned the basket over, imprisoning it. I locked the shit off my nightstand and laid it sideways on top of the basket, good and heavy. There were vertical slots in the basket, and the spider stuck a leg through it. It couldn't crawl out, but I suspected it could bite through the plastic eventually. Have to watch it. I sat heavily on the bed, chest heaving, face wet and sticky. Cringing, I lifted a tentative hand to the right side of my face, expecting to find a squishy eyeball laying on my cheek. I didn't. I winked as I felt around the eyelid, raw skin stinging at my touch. Everything felt torn and ragged up there. I blinked and tried looking through the eye, found I could a little bit. I looked down, intending to dig my cell phone from my pocket, and let out a disgusted hiss. The spider's black leg, the one that broke off when I was pulling it off of me, was still stuck to my shirt. I grabbed it and pulled it, and it would not come free. It wasn't stuck to the shirt. It was stuck to me, pulling up the skin like a circus tent. The foot was hooked in somehow, dug in like a tick. I pulled apart the hole in the shirt and pinched the skin between two fingers and tried to get a close look at it. I couldn't tell the exact point where the severed leg ended and the patch of skin on my shoulder began. It was like the leg had fused to it somehow. I pulled and twisted. It was like trying to pull off one of my own fingers. I was getting seriously pissed off at this point. I stomped out to the bedroom and into the kitchen. I yanked open several drawers until I found a utility knife, what some people call a box cutter. Molly came trotting in behind me, figuring maybe I was making a snack and she could get some scraps. I pulled off my shirt, then grabbed a long wooden spoon and stuck it sideways in my mouth. I stabbed the tip of the utility short blade into the point where the monster's foot was fused with my skin and started prying. I growled and cursed around the spoon, teeth denting into the wood. A thick drop of blood ran down my chest like candle wax. It took 20 minutes, In the end, I had the 6-inch long jointed leg in my hand and a little dot of bloody skin and fat on the end that used to be a part of me. I held a bundle of wet paper towels to the wound, smears of blood making my abdomen look like a finger painting. I put the monster's leg in a plastic container from my cabinet. I leaned against the counter, eyes closed, taking slow breaths. I had taken one step back toward the bedroom when a knock came at the door. I froze, decided not to answer it, then realized it may be John. I went into the bedroom to check on the caged beast. It had 2 legs through a slot in the plastic basket, but had made no progress toward biting its way out. I made my way back across the living room, smacking my foot on the coffee table on the way. I yanked open the door. It was a cop. A young guy. I knew him. Name was Frankie something. Went to high school with me. I straightened up and said, "What can I do for you, officer?" I saw his eyes go right to my torso, where I was holding a red wad of paper towels over a freely bleeding wound, and then back to my face, where one eye was swollen shut under a ragged eyelid caked with dried blood. He had a hand resting on the butt of his gun, alert in that way that cops are. He began with, "Who else is in the house, sir?" "It's fine. I mean, nobody. I live here alone. I mean, my girlfriend lives here with me, but she's away at school right now, so it's just me. Everything's fine. I just had a problem with something that came into the house. Some kind of animal." "You mind if I come in, sir?" There was no right answer to that, since he clearly thought I had a butchered prostitute in here somewhere. I stepped aside without a word. That "sir" shit was irritating me. He was my age. I went to parties with this guy in school, watched him play teabag twister with underwear on his head. Burgess, I thought. That's his name. Frankie Burgess. He walked past me and I said, "I'd turn on a light, but the power's out. Must have, blown a fuse or something." He gave me a look that suggested what I had just said gave him a whole new perspective on my mental state. I could read his face perfectly because the living room light was on. "Oh, right," I stumbled. "Guess it's back on now." I blinked. Had it been on this whole time? The place was a mess. I mean, it had been a mess before. The blood I dripped on the carpet actually blended with the nearby coffee stain. But where we were standing gave us a clear view into the kitchen, where drawers were flung open, a roll of paper towels had fallen onto the floor, and a pile of plastic lids had spilled out of a cabinet. A couple of steps after that, and he would have had a view into the main bedroom, where it looked like a bomb had gone off. Oh, and there was an alien spider monster trapped under an overturned laundry basket with a piece of furniture piled up on top of it. The cop moved into the kitchen and I followed him. I heard a skittering noise from the bedroom and saw the spider trying desperately to escape between the plastic bars of his laundry basket prison. The cop gave no notice. He looked at the bloody box cutter on the counter, then glanced back at me and my several body wounds. I stepped casually backward, stopping in front of the bedroom door, leaning against the door frame as if I wasn't somehow trying to block the view of the room room with my body. "Yeah, that," I said, nodding toward the little knife. "I cut myself a few times. No big deal. I was trying to get this thing off me. I think it was a possum or something. I couldn't get a look at it. It was clawing me up pretty bad." He was looking past me into the bedroom and said, "Can you step aside, sir?" "Screw it. Let this thing bite his eyes out. What do I care? Go right in, Frankie." I stepped aside, and Frankie the cop entered the bedroom. He surveyed the carnage, then finally looked down at the overturned basket. 5 little armored legs writhed around between the plastic slats. The cop casually looked away, glancing into my closet with disinterest. Finally, he looked back at me. "So did you kill it or what?" The beast was right there in the basket, in full view, jaws clicking against the plastic, a sound like a dog gnawing on a bone. It had gotten a few legs entirely out of the basket and was now pulling its body through. All of this went entirely unnoticed by Officer Burgess. "He doesn't see it." No. I tried to trap it." The thing had its head out of the basket now. Frankie looked down. Nothing to see. He looked back at me. "Have you had anything to drink tonight, sir?" "A couple of beers earlier." "Have you taken anything else?" "No." "Can you tell me what day it is?" The spider had a third of its body out of the basket. There was a thick piece of armor around its abdomen that was wedged in between the plastic strips. It had 4 legs working on the problem. "Thursday night. I guess it's Friday morning now. November 4th, I think. My name is David Wong. I'm currently standing in my home. I'm not high. The neighbors are worried about you. They heard a lot of noise in here. You try waking up with some animal biting you in your sleep. This isn't the first time we've been out here, is it?" I sighed. "No." "You put some weight on top of the basket there." I told you I was trying to trap it. No, the basket was you trying to trap it. I think the weight is there because you thought you had trapped it. What? No, it was dark. The monster pulled the widest piece of shell through the bars, halfway out, the difficult half. Is it possible you made all those cuts yourself, with a knife in there? What? No, I don't think so. Why do you keep looking down there? I took a step back out of the room. No reason. Do you see something down there, Mr. Wong? I turned my eyes up to the cop. I was sweating again. No, no. Have we been seeing things tonight? I didn't answer. Because this wouldn't be the first time, would it? That was... No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I focused on not looking down at the basket. The chewing sounds had stopped. I couldn't hold out anymore. I looked down. It was gone. I felt my bowels loosen. I glanced around the room, checking the ceiling. Nowhere. The cop turned and left the room. Why don't you come with me, Mr. Wong, and I'll take you to the emergency room. What? No, I'm fine. The cuts are no big deal. Don't look minor to me. No, it's fine. Put it in your report that I refuse treatment. I'm fine. You got any family that live here in town? No. Nobody? Parents? Aunts? Uncles? Long story. There's a friend we can call? John, I guess. I was glancing everywhere, trying to spot the spider. No idea what I'd do if I did. Well, tell you what, give him a call, and I'll hang out here until he shows up. Keep you company, in case the animal comes back. I couldn't think of anything that would make this guy leave, short of punching him and forcing him to haul me to jail. That hardly seemed like a solution, though. The cop can stay as long as he wants, I thought, as long as he doesn't go to the tool shed. Frankie the cop turned to me at that moment and said, I'm going to have a look around outside. I let the cop go out the back door, but didn't offer to follow him. I guess he wanted to do a walk around of the yard to make sure there wasn't a corpse out there. Let him. As soon as he was out of sight, I moved back through the kitchen, into the living room, and then through to the bedroom. I flipped on the light, checked the ceiling, checked everywhere. No spider. I heard the muffled sounds of steps on crackling leaves and saw the cop outside, passing the window with a flashlight. I headed for the bathroom, soaked a washcloth, and cleaned the dried blood off me. I got a Band-Aid on my shoulder and cleaned up the eyelid, flinching with every stinging touch. I went to the bedroom, searching for the monster, even looking in the laundry basket in case the thing had decided to return for some reason. I put on a shirt and tried to push down my hair, thinking I could present a picture of a stable citizen for the cop and make him feel better about leaving, before he asks to see the tool shed. I grabbed my phone from the bed and dialed John one last time. 3 rings, and then... Hello? John, it's me. What? Who? We got a situation. Can it wait until after work tomorrow? No, there's something in my house. I glanced around for the cop. A creature. I think it took a chunk of my leg and then it went for my eye. Really? You kill it? No, it's hiding somewhere. It's small. How small? Size of a squirrel, built like an insect, lots of legs, maybe 12. It had a mouth like... I turned and saw the cop standing in the bedroom doorway. I nodded sideways toward the phone and said, This is John. He's on his way. Good, he said, nodded toward the back door. Do you have a key to that tool shed outside? I pocketed the phone without saying goodbye to John. Oh, no, I've lost the key. I mean, I haven't been out there in months. I've got a pair of bolt cutters out in my trunk. Tell you what, let me open that up for you. No, that won't be necessary. I insist. You don't want to be stuck without your lawn implements. You can finally rake all those leaves out there. We stared each other down. Man, this just kept getting better and better. I found myself wishing the spider would jump down and eat this guy. Actually, I think I have a key. Good. Get it. I went into the kitchen and plucked the tool shed off the nail next to the back door, where it had been in plain view the entire time. Frankie the cop let me lead the way outside to the shed, staying a few steps back so that he could have time to shoot me in case I decided to wheel on him in fists of fury. I held out the key and took a deep breath. I slipped it into the padlock and snapped it open. I pulled the tool shed door slightly ajar and turned to Frankie. What's in here? I collect things. It's a hobby, that's all. And as far as I know, there's nothing illegal here. Though you could say the same of its, imported. Can you go ahead and step back, sir? He opened the little shed and stabbed the darkness with a flashlight beam. I held my breath. He went right to the floor with the light, where a body would be, I guess. There wasn't one there, Not right now, and instead he illuminated the crust of grass on the wheel of my lawnmower. Then he flicked the flashlight beam to a set of metal shelves along the back and side walls. The beam hit a glass jar the size of a can of paint and illuminated the murky liquid inside. Officer Frankie Burgess stared at it, waiting for his eyes to register what he was seeing. Eventually, he would figure out it was a late-term fetus. A head the size of a fist, its eyes closed, it had no arms or legs. Its torso had been replaced by a jointed mechanical apparatus that looked around to be a point like the tail of a seahorse. I manufactured a chuckle and said, I got that off eBay. It's a prop from a movie. The cop glanced at me. I glanced away. He shined his light back onto the shelf. Next to the jar was an ant farm. The tunnels between the panes of glass had been dug neatly to spell out the word help. Next to that was my old Xbox, the cables wrapped around it. He moved the light down a foot, to the shelf below. He passed over a stack of old magazines, not noticing that the top one was an old faded issue of Time depicting a swarm of Secret Service agents around a dead Bill Clinton. The words, "Who did it?" blasted across the picture in red. Next to the magazines was a stuffed red Tickle Me Elmo doll, the fur faded with dust. At the moment the light hit it, its sound box crackled to life, and in a cartoony voice it said, "Ha ha ha! 5 3/4 inches erect!" I said, "It's, broken." Frankie the cop inched the beam to the next object. A mason jar contained a twisted purple tongue suspended in clear liquid. Next to it was a duplicate jar, only with 2 human eyes floating side by side, trailing a tangled tail of nerves and blood vessels. The cop didn't notice that when the beam swept past the jar, the eyes turned to follow it. Next to the jars was an old battery from my truck, matted with smears of black grime. The light made it to the bottom, where it found a red plastic gasoline can sitting on the floor next to an old CRT computer monitor with a screen that had been shattered by a shotgun. I'm sorry, just by a gunshot. I don't know why I said shotgun. I read that word backwards. Next to it was the one thing I didn't want the cop to see. The box. We heard crunching leaves behind us. "Yo, what's up?" The cop and I turned to see a dark figure with one hand swinging the orange coal of a burning cigarette. John. "Hi, Frankie. Dave. Sorry I sent you all those pictures of my dick. I hope that's not what caused your injury to your eye." The cop put the flashlight on John, maybe to make sure he wasn't armed. John wore a flannel shirt and a black baseball cap with the word hat on it in all caps. Frankie the cop thanked John for coming over. I was hoping he would back out of the tool shed because each minute he stood there made me more and more nervous. My eye and shoulder were throbbing. The wind shifted, and I picked up the scent of alcohol from John. The cop swung the flashlight beam around and spotlighted the floor of the tool shed again. Light fell on the box, and I mean the box. The olive green box we'd found in the back of that unmarked black truck. It looked like it was a serious box. It looked like something you'd want to look inside of, if your job was to keep people safe. Frankie nodded towards it. "What's in the green box there?" "Don't know." That was sort of true, I guess. John said, "We found it. You can't get it open." That was also true. Frankie couldn't get it open. I said, "You can take it back with you, if you want. Put it in the lost and found at the police station." The cop clicked off the flashlight, then asked John if they could go inside and talk. He then gestured toward the tool shed with the flashlight and said to me, "You want to close that up while I have a word with John?" I said that seemed like a fine idea, and their shoes crunched through the leaves until they reached the light of my back door. I closed the tool shed and clicked the padlock shut, then let out a sigh of relief. The relief lasted approximately 4 seconds, the time it took me to realize John and Frankie the cop were now back inside the house with the murderous alien spider. I hurried back inside and saw John and the cop in my living room having a low conversation out of my hearing. The cop, I guess, was asking John to babysit me and to call if I showed more signs of craziness. I moved closer and barely heard John say, "Been real depressed lately," and I wondered what kind of portrait he was painting in there. I scanned the kitchen for the spider, being sure to check the high ground. No sign of it. I closed some of the open drawers and cabinets, tried to straighten the place up. I made it all the way out of the room before I turned and realized that cabinets would be an ideal hiding place for the little bastard. I'd be getting out my cereal tomorrow morning and the fucker would launch itself at me. Could I search through them without drawing Frankie's attention? Better wait. Instead, I checked the bedroom, again under the guise of straightening up. I looked under my blankets, and then under the bed. I pushed around the clothes in my closet. I checked behind the door. No spider. When I came out, I saw John and the cop were on the front porch. Progress. John was thanking the man for coming out, saying he hoped Frankie would remember me in his prayers because I could really use it right now because my life is really a mess, and I was just a complete pathetic loser struggling with my weight, and my financial problems, and alcohol, and erectile dysfunction. I decided to join them before John could defame me further. The cop was already walking back toward his patrol car as John said, "And his girlfriend is away, and she's only got one hand. She lost it in an accident. You can imagine the problems that causes." Frankie was desperately trying to escape the conversation, talking into the little radio mounted on the shoulder of his uniform, letting headquarters know that everything was under control here. John and I watched him go. Then we heard a skittering by our feet and saw the goddamn spider run past our shoes. It vanished into the darkness, heading right toward the cop. I jumped off the porch, waving my hands. "Wait! Frankie! Officer Burgess! Wait!" The cop stopped just short of the squad car and turned to me. I opened my mouth, but the words retreated back into my throat. A bundle of thin black legs appeared over Frankie's left shoulder, touching his bare neck, and he couldn't feel a thing. From behind me, John said, Frankie, don't move, man! You got something on you!" Frankie put his hand on the butt of his gun again, looking alertly between me and John as if his crazy person troubles had just multiplied. The monster crawled over Frankie's shoulder and put legs on his cheek. John screamed, "Frankie, do this!" Made a brushing motion with his cheek, as if waving away a fly. "Seriously, you got something on your face!" Frankie, oblivious to his situation, did not follow these instructions. He started to say something about us not moving any closer. I lunged, throwing my hands toward the little monster. I never made it. Frankie did something to me that dropped me to my knees, gasping for air. It was some kind of chop to the throat, and man, it worked. I looked up, and for the second time tried to warn Frankie, and for the second time I was unable to. The spider crawled around to Frankie's chest and then, in a blur, burrowed into his mouth. Frankie flailed backward and flung himself to the ground, his head thunking against the squad car's door on the way down. Frankie clawed at his mouth with his hands, gasping, choking, spasming. I backed away, crawling backward on my ass through the leaves. As I retreated, John advanced, saying, Frankie, hey!" Frankie wasn't responsive. His arms were locked in front of him, fingers curled, like he was being electrocuted. John spun at me and said, "We gotta get him to the hospital." I sat there in the grass, frozen, wishing I could just go back inside and crawl under the covers again. John threw open both back doors of the cop car. He dug his hands under Frankie's shoulders. "Dave, help me!" I got to my feet and took Frankie's ankles. We wrestled him into the back seat of the squad car, John backing out through the opposite door. We closed it up, and John took the wheel. I slid beside John as he hunted around the console for a switch. He found it, flipped it. A siren pierced the night. He shifted into gear and tore down the street, red and blue flashing off every window in the neighborhood as we raced past. We blew through an intersection. I pulled on my seatbelt and braced my hands against the dash. "That thing came into my house, John. It came into my house." I know. I woke up and that thing was biting me. In my bed, John." We turned the corner, around the closed restaurant, with "For Sale" painted on the windows in white shoe polish. We passed the blackened shell of a hardware store that had burned down last year. We passed a trailer park and a used car dealership with a 24-hour adult bookstore and a skanky motel that never had any vacancies because lots of poor people lived there full-time. "It was in my house, John. Do you get what I'm saying here? Frankie couldn't even see it. It was on his face and he couldn't see it. It was in my house." I felt my body push against the armrest of the door. Tires squealed. John was taking a corner car chase style. 2 blocks up was the concrete parking garage of the hospital, the lit windows of the hospital itself looming up behind it. I peered back through the wire screen separating us from Frankie, who was laying motionlessly across the back seat, eyes open. His chest was heaving. So, at least he wasn't dead. "Almost there, man. Hold on, okay?" I turned to John. "It crawled in his mouth. Did you see it?" "I saw it." "Are they going to be able to help him? You really think the doctors could do something?" We squealed into the parking lot and followed a sign that said "Emergency." We skidded to a stop in a covered drive-up with the emergency room. We threw open the back door and dragged out Frankie, then clumsily lugged him toward a set of glass doors that slid open for us automatically. Before we got 5 feet inside, a couple of orderlies came and started barking questions at us that we had no answers to. Somebody rolled up a gurney. John started talking, telling the guys the cop had some kind of a seizure, that he had something in his throat, definitely to check his throat. There was a flicker of red and blue lights out of the corner of my eye. A second cop car turning in fast across the parking lot. They probably saw John and me tearing ass through town and followed us here. The orderlies were rolling away Frankie, and a third guy showed up. A doctor, I guess, taking his vitals. I turned to John to tell him about the second cop car, but he had already spotted it. I followed him back out to the sidewalk. Think we should hang around? He asked. I don't think so. I'm already on probation. Dave, they're gonna come get us. They'll want to know what happened. Nah, I don't think that thing's gonna be a big deal. Probably send us a nice card for getting Frankie to the hospital. Come on. We took off walking, since it didn't seem wise to go back home in some stolen cop car. We went around the edge of the lot as the approaching police car whooshed past us. It skidded to a stop next to Frankie's vehicle, and 2 cops spilled out and went inside. We silently cut across the lawn and crossed the street with a traffic light blinking yellow. We cut through the darkened parking lot of a Chinese restaurant called Panda Buffet, which did not in fact serve panda meat as far as we knew. Behind it was one of the city's many abandoned properties, the depressing twin buildings of an old tuberculosis asylum that had been closed since the 60s, and gray bricks tinged with moss green. John lit a cigarette and asked, "So what do you think that thing was?" I didn't answer. I found myself scanning the dark plane of each parking lot we passed, studying the shadows, looking for movement. I noticed my steps were hurrying me unconsciously toward the pool of a light under the next street lamp. We passed into the parking lot. We passed into the parking lot of a tire place with the 10-foot-tall tire mascot standing in the street. The mascot was made of real tires, with mufflers for arms and a chrome wheel for a head. Some joker had used white spray paint to draw a penis on the front of it in the anatomically appropriate spot. John said, "So that thing crawled into his mouth. What do you think it was doing?" "How should I know?" A blur of red and blue zipped by. Another cop car, lights flashing. 30 seconds later, another one. John said, "Man, these guys really gather around one of their own, don't they?" We walked on, hesitant, a sick feeling in my gut. 2 more cop cars flew by. One had different markings. State cop, I guess. They're just going there to check up on him, right, John? I don't know, man. Let's get home. We'll see if they got anything about it on TV. But he had stopped saying, "No point. All you get is the news after it gets filtered for the reporters. We'll get better information if we go back down there." We'd just be in the... I stopped at the sound of a distant scream. John said, "You hear that?" "No." Another cop car zipped past. How many of those did we have in this town? "Come on, Dave." John took off walking back the way we came. I stood my ground. I didn't want to go back there, but, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I also didn't want to walk back to my place alone, in the dark. I raised a hand to touch the spot of my eye where I had been bitten, raw flesh under a band-aid. I winced as the pain in my shoulder stopped me before I could get my hand up there. The chunk taken out of my skin there was getting sorer by the minute. I was about to tell John to have fun without me when... Pop! 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 The sound of distant gunshots, like firecrackers. John started jogging back across the tire store parking lot toward the hospital. I let out a breath, then followed. Ooh, that was a long section. Let me see what messages did I miss. And get a sip of my drink. Let's see. Oh, thank you for the compliment, Java. Let's see. Full of spiders, but isn't exactly what I was expecting. Yeah, definitely check out the first book. The first book's amazing. Ah, I'm sure you're already gone. Yeah, I see my viewer countdown. Have a good night for everybody who left. If you check this out later, I hope you had a good sleep. All right. Let me see. I'm going to read... What page are we on? We're on 37, and it's 2 a.m. I'm going to keep reading until either 3 or 4, because that's when I usually go to bed. Hey, glad you're still here. I hope you're liking it. Let me see. Okay, so we're going to read some more. Let me get another sip of water before I start back up. Mark my place so I don't close the book on it. Okay. Well, whenever you decide to dip, I hope you have a good night, or in your case, maybe a good morning, because it's a little earlier for you than it is for me. But I am glad you joined me tonight, and I'm going to keep reading. Okay. 27 hours prior to outbreak. Seems like a good stopping point. I typically stream Mondays and Tuesdays, usually on Thursdays and Fridays. I occasionally stream on Saturdays. I don't usually stream on Sundays. I don't typically have a set schedule. Like, I just kind of go when I can. Right now I'm a little between jobs, so I'm just kind of streaming whenever. But yeah, once I do have work, I'll probably have like specific days that I'll be like, okay, I'm going to stream here and here. You do Tuesday, Thursdays? Awesome. I'll be sure to check you guys out. All right. Yeah, I do appreciate you guys dropping in tonight. Yeah, I kind of just go whenever I have the ability. What can I say? I enjoy streaming. Well, you're welcome. Thank you guys again for dropping by. I hope you have a great night. Get some good sleep while you can. Okay. 27 hours prior to outbreak. We arrived on the hospital grounds to see that all hell had broken loose. 6 cop cars were parking haphazardly around the emergency room entrance, lighting up the parking lot like a dancing floor. There was an ambulance, its rear doors open. People were spilling out of the hospital entrance, their heads down like they were running the trenches in a war zone. One lady came out in aqua blue scrubs. One side of her hair matted down with blood. There was a clump of onlookers on the far side of the lawn that included 3 or 4 wheelchairs, maybe 50 yards from the hospital. It looked like they were gathering patients there, getting them away from the building. One cop was talking to them and gesturing with his hand, karate chopping the air with each barked command. His other hand held a pistol pointed at the sky. Pop, 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 pop. More shots from inside. John, possessing a genetic defect that makes him walk toward danger, strode down toward where it looked like some cop cars were trying to set up a perimeter around the chaos. Somewhere, Charles Darwin nodded and smiled a knowing smile. We came upon 2 cops blocking the sidewalk, a fat black one with glasses and an older guy whose face was all mustache. John stepped off the sidewalk as if to walk right past them on the grass. Black cop put out a hand and told us to stop, in a tone that suggested if we didn't, he would taser us until our blood boiled. We backed off, stepping aside as paramedics hustled the bleeding head lady past us. She was crying, holding her head, saying over and over again, "He wouldn't die. He just wouldn't die. They shot him over and over again, and he..." John tapped my shoulder and pointed. A boxy truck was pulling up, blue with white letters on the side. I thought it was some kind of paddy wagon, but the doors opened. A SWAT team spilled out. Holy shit. John moved off the sidewalk and up onto the lawn in front of the building. There were some benches there, and a 10-foot-tall bronze statue of a lady in old-timey nurse's garb holding a lantern. Florence Nightingale? I followed John, and we joined a small crowd of onlookers. Gunshots. Rapid shots, dozens of them. Gasps from the audience. I could barely see down there, but I could make out people running out of the building, frantic. One lady fell down and got accidentally kicked hard in the face. Then, a man came out supported on the shoulders of 2 hospital staff, his right leg missing from the knee down. Or at least, that's what it looked like. Keep in mind, we were still far enough away that the door looked about the size of a postage stamp, and I was trying to look through a growing crowd in front of me. That's why I can't be totally sure about what happened next. First, a man in a black SWAT outfit came running out of the building, screaming something. I couldn't hear him from where we were standing, but to this day, John insists the man was screaming, "Run away." Then, shots. Loud, sharp, close. Next came the screams. Screams from every single human being close enough to the lobby to see what was going on. 3 cops near the entrance ducked behind the parked patrol cars and trained guns on the sliding doors. A man lumbered out. Every gun barrel followed him. It was Officer Frankie Burgess. He was wearing his cop uniform pants and a red shirt. No, that's not right. It was a white undershirt, stained with blood over 80% of its area. People crowded around, blocking my view. John craned his neck and said, "It's Frankie. Everybody's got their guns on him. Looks like he's dangerous. Did he shoot all those people? Hey, move, buddy. I can't see." Frustrated, John went to the nurse statue and, to my horror, climbed it. He got up to where both hands were on her shoulders, his shoes planted on her forearms. Florence's face was planted in John's crotch. I waved at him. "John, get down from there." I could see him. It looks like they're talking to him. I don't see a gun. Oh shit, look at his arm. Dave, his right arm is broken. And I mean, it's almost broken at a right angle. And Frankie doesn't even act like he cares. Oh, wait, something's going on. A cop voice from nearby said, "Get down from there, you! Get down!" John ignored him. A burst of gunfire. Everybody ducked. "They're shooting him!" shouted John. "They're shooting a lot! You can see bits of him flying off. He's still up! Holy shit, Holy shit!" He just grabbed one of the SWAT guys. He grabbed him by the ankles and is swinging him around like a baseball bat. He's knocking the other guys down. Bullshit. John, get down from there. He's biting a guy now. He's eating him. A cop. He's got him by the neck. What? More shots. Screams. Suddenly, I was awash in a panicked current of swinging elbows and shoulders. John jumped down from the statue and ran with the crowd, as fast as he could. Over his shoulder, he yelled, "Dave, he's coming!" I took 2 steps, and somebody slammed into me. My face bounced off wet grass. I climbed to my knees in the stampede. A woman nearby screamed at the top of her lungs. I spun, and between running figures saw a shirt stained red with blood. Frankie. Standing right there, left arm jutting grotesquely under the elbow, blood dripping to the grass from a protruding shard of bone. Police were shouting in the distance, commanding us to get down. How did he beat them here? He cleared half a football field in 5 seconds. Frankie's torso was riddled with puckered bullet wounds, leaking red. His chest heaved with excited breaths, his punctured lungs whistling with each inhale. The broken arm was moving, twitching, the bones tearing free of skin and curling like tentacles. What the shit? Cops ran into position. I saw one SWAT guy fumbling to cram a new magazine into the little submachine gun he had. They shouted orders at each other and at the crowd. Frankie opened his mouth, opening wide like a yawn. And just for a second, I thought I saw the face of the spider, nestling there behind his teeth, filling the cavity with its black body. Then the Frankie monster let out a noise like I had never heard before. It was a shriek, like microphone feedback, but more organic and pained, like the sound of a whale would make if it were on fire. The ground shook from it. My bowels quivered. I think I shat a little. I saw people hitting the ground all around me, saw guns fall from the hands of cops. I clapped my palms over my ears as the pained shriek of Frankie the monster filled my bones. Frankie's back arched, his mouth opened to the sky, howling. Blood was spurting from a dozen bullet holes. It was the last thing I saw before the world swam away and went black. Oh, hey, Neo. Welcome in. Thank you for the raid. How are you doing tonight, buddy? How was your stream? Oh, let me give you a shout out real quick. Oh. All right.
No, notice me, senpai.
Oh, whoa, notice me, Kiwana Weave senpai.
Points fingers together.
If you don't notice me, Kiana Weaves a senpai, I'm going to have to stab you.
Oh, jeez.
Stab up.
I'm going to stab a woo because I wubba you. The yandere that's also just speaking in uwoos.
Yandawu.
Uwoo, if you don't love me back, uwoo, I'm going to have to stab a woo.
Keanu senpai.
Keanu senpai.
A Yandawu. Stream was fun and good. Saw you reading and knew have a good come and listen before you sleep. Oh, we're in for a scary story. We're welcome in. Welcome Raiders. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Dialing for Mac. I am the Tentacle VTuber. I'm a variety streamer. I do lots of games, but I do occasional reading and art streams. And tonight we're kicking off a little what's the word I'm looking for? A little pre-event Spooktember storytelling with the sequel to John Dies at the End. This book is full of spiders by David Wong. Let me see here. We got so far in the story, we've had an invisible thing in the shower. David is the main character. He has been to a therapist, and he's caught up with his girlfriend a little bit, and then he was attacked by a spider-like creature that had got into his house and nearly got him. But he managed. His dog Molly saved him, basically. She realized that it was covered in peanut butter and ate a couple of its legs. And then a cop came around because of a noise complaint. And the spider got to the cop. And they took him to the hospital. So that is the point we left off. Frankie, now Monster Frankie, because he's possessed by a crazy spider that replaced his mouth, let out a scream. And I'll reread the description of the scream. Then Frankie the monster let out a noise like I had never heard before. It was a shriek, like microphone feedback, but more organic and pained, like the sound of a whale would make if it were on fire. The ground shook from it. My bowels quivered. I think I shat a little. I saw people hitting the ground all around me, saw guns fall from the hands of cops. I clapped my palms over my ears as the pained shriek of Frankie the monster filled my bones. Frankie's back arched, his mouth open to the sky, howling. Blood was spurting from a dozen bullet holes. It was the last thing I saw before the world swam away and went black. I came to and sat up. People were standing around, nobody running. No sign of Frankie. Some time had passed. The horizon was shitting a sun, casting a glow on a layer of fog that was settling in the low areas like puddles of ghost piss. I saw John about 10 feet away, on his feet but bent over at the waist, gripping his pants at the knees. He was blinking as if trying to focus his eyes. "John, you all right?" He nodded, looking at the ground. "Yeah. I'm thinking that sound he made melted our brains. Did they get him?" "I don't know. I just came to." A white truck pulled up with a dish apparatus on the back. It had a TV station logo on the side. We were about to be on live TV. I tried to fix my hair with my hands. Hospital staff and aqua scrubs were walking people back into the building. It looked like every policeman in the state was here, taking statements from people. I realized John and I should probably get going before we got asked a bunch of questions that, once again, we didn't have any non-crazy answers for. Not just about tonight, but everything. I turned toward John, but John wasn't there anymore. I went looking for him, giving one pair of cops a wide berth along the way. I thought about just going home without him, but then I saw him standing out on the street and talking to a goddamn reporter. I stomped over there, walked right in front of the camera, and was about to grab him by the collar and drag him away when John said, "Oh, shit!" I followed John's gaze and said, "Oh, shit." The reporter lowered her microphone and said, "Oh, shit." Army guys. A lot of them. National Guard, I guessed. They were wearing that grayish urban camo they wear these days. They had parked a green truck across the intersection where the hospital driveway met the road. Cars were lined up trying to get out, and soldiers were going down the line and issuing instructions to angry drivers. Up by the truck, a soldier raised a bullhorn and said, "Attention! Do not leave the area. There is a significant chance you have been exposed to a contagious pathogen. Leaving the area could lead to spreading the infection to your family and friends. By order of the Centers of Disease Control, you are not to leave the area. Please go back to the lobby of the hospital where you will be given further instructions. This is for your own safety. We apologize for the inconvenience, and you will be released as soon as it is determined that you do not pose an infection risk to those around you. Thank you for your cooperation. If you do attempt to leave the area, you will be prosecuted. Do not attempt to leave the area. John tossed down his cigarette, stamped it out, and said, "Let's leave the area." Yeah. We left the reporter behind and circled around, looking for a way out. We found the ambulance-only entrance around the block had a Humvee across it. The soldiers were forming a perimeter, camouflage dots looping around the grounds. We looked around behind the building, where there was a little strip of wood separating the hospital grounds from town. Same scene, with the addition of some guys unloading spools of razor wire from the back of a truck. John spat and said, "This might sound like an odd thing to say right now at this moment, but I wish those guys were wearing hazmat suits. Yeah, or at least something covering their mouths. There wouldn't happen to be a door around here, would there?" "A door?" "You know, one of the..." "Oh, there's not one in the hospital as far as I know. That would have been awfully convenient, though." John thought for a moment and said, "What about BB's? It's right on the other side of the trees there." BB's was a convenience store about 2 blocks away, but on the other side of the little wooded area. Among those trees was a deep drainage ditch we'd have to cross. Man, I don't know. He edged around to get a look at the guardsman standing between us and the woods, and he said, "Come on. We wait till that guy goes to help unload some more of that wire, then run through the gap there. But if we're going to do it, we got to do it now, before the sun comes all the way up." "And what makes you think those other guys won't shoot us in the head?" "They're not going to do that. All these guys know is that they got up in the wee hours of the morning to fence off a hospital because a guy went on a shooting rampage and they're afraid some diseases may have escaped. They don't know there's a, monster situation going on." "And you know all of this how?" "TJ Fry is over there on the other side. You remember TJ? Came to that party a few years ago and stuck his dick in the jelly? He's like a sergeant now. Said they haven't been told shit." "Well, they're going to chase us." "Yeah, but we just got to make it to BB's." John stripped off his shirt and started wrapping it around his face, like he was really going to join some riot in the Middle East. "Cover your face unless you want them to identify you and show up at your house in an hour." Peering through a 1/4-inch slip of wrapped t-shirt, we crouched low and stayed in the shadows until we reached the narrow stretch of lawn between us and the woods. We stayed that for about 15 minutes until one guard left his post to accept a cup of coffee from another. We sprinted. I immediately slipped in the wet grass and fell on my face. My shirt mask slipped over my eyes. I scrambled to my feet and just ran, as hard and as fast as I could, nearly blind. I heard shouted commands, but no gunshots. A branch slapped me in the face, and I knew I had reached the woods. I stumbled and clawed the shirts away from my eye, just in time to feel the ground give way under me. I was sliding down an embankment of wet grass and dead leaves, then splashed into freezing ankle-deep water. It was dark. There had been an early morning gloom out on the lawn, but it was still midnight under the trees. No sign of John, or anyone else. I sloshed through the water and scrambled up the other side, pulling myself up with handfuls of weeds, knocking aside discarded grocery bags and flattened plastic Coke bottles. A hand latched around my ankle. A different hand latched around my wrist. John up top, one of the soldiers on bottom. For a ridiculous moment, I was pulled in opposite directions like a cartoon character, both men shouting frantic instructions at me. I tried to kick free and accidentally kicked the guy in the head in the process. It worked. In 3 seconds, John and I were out of the woods and sprinting diagonally across a parking lot, through the bay of a car wash, down an alley, and toward the gray bricks and rusting dumpster that was the ass end of BB's convenience store. I risked a look over my shoulder. Shit! There was no fewer than 10 soldiers following us now, the 2 in the lead carrying black plastic pistols with neon green tips. They looked like toys, but I knew they were tasers. I was eager to avoid my 5th lifetime tasering if at all possible. The restroom door was on the exterior of the store, around the corner to our left. I rushed up to it, grabbed a rickety knob, and... "Locked," I said, trying to catch my breath. "The key! Inside! You have to get the key from the counter inside." John shoved me aside, reared back, and kicked the door. The whole knob and latch mechanism exploded. We crammed ourselves inside, pushing the broken door closed. 1, 2, 3. Hey, you two, get the fuck out of there and lay a fuck on the pavement before we have to. The soldier was cut off mid-word. I pulled open the door to find we were surrounded by panties. We stepped out of the ladies' dressing room at the Walmart on the opposite side of town. John and I had traveled about 2.5 miles in approximately 0 seconds. Right now, at BB's, several very confused National Guardsmen were staring at an extremely filthy and completely empty public bathroom. We stepped into the aisle of the nearby empty store. 2 muddy men with t-shirts wrapped around their heads. John unwrapped his and said, "What is this, Walmart?" So I wasn't completely honest with the psychiatrist about the whole thing with the mysterious door and the burrito stand and the Asian dude who disappeared into it. John and I have identified half a dozen of these doors around town, and we know where they lead. To each other. The only thing is, you never know which of the other doors they were going to take you to. It was basically doorway roulette. I mean, you're not going to step out in Beijing or anything. It's always another door around town. All the ones we found, anyway. But they never seem to go to the same place twice. Why? Because this whole town is fucked up, that's why. I keep trying to tell you that. You don't want to come here. It's exhausting. John and I didn't draw much attention as we moved through the town, through the store since. At this particular store in this particular town, we weren't even the filthiest people there. We just walked right out the front door and headed back toward town along the shoulder of the highway. It was a wet, chilled morning under a lethargic November sky that had rolled out of bed and thrown on an old gray, grease-stained t-shirt. John said, "Did you hear? They never found Frankie." Wonderful. What do you think happened? You think that bug thing took over his brain? Hey, why not? You think he's going to turn up again? If you're asking yourself why the men with guns chasing us couldn't just use the magic door and follow us right to Walmart, it's because for most people, the doors are just doors. Same as for most people, the spider monster in my house would have just been invisible, just as it was for Frankie. Same as how, if you've been in the bathroom with me all those months ago when I saw that shadowy shape outside my shower, you'd have seen nothing. You might have sensed something, just as in your everyday life, you might sit in a dark house and feel like you're not alone, or have a nagging suspicion that something slipped around a corner just a moment before you looked. That feeling can usually be expressed by the phrase, "Of course there's nothing there. Now." To be clear, if you've actually seen a ghost, that doesn't make you like us. A ghost sighting is usually nothing more than your brain trying to put a familiar face on something that does not have a face at all. John and I, on the other hand, can see what most of you can only sense. We're not special. It's just the result of some drugs we took. Just for future reference, if you're ever at a party and a Rastafarian offers you a syringe full of slimy black substance that crawls around on its own like the blob, don't take it. And don't call us either. We get enough bullshit from strangers as it is. 25 hours prior to outbreak. English should have a word for that feeling you get when you first wake up in a strange room and have no freaking idea where you are. Hotezelment? It was cold, and every inch of my body was in pain. I heard a crunching, like the jaws of a predator grinding through bone. I pulled open my eyes. I saw a dragon standing proudly atop a hill before me. The dragon was on a TV screen. Beneath it, a video game console with a tangle of cords snaking across a green carpet. I blinked, squinted at the sun burning in through a cracked window. I turned, hearing my neck creak as I did, and saw John sitting at a computer desk in the corner, staring into the monitor and holding a bottle full of clear liquid that I'm sure you wouldn't want to try to put out fire with. I sat up, realizing I had been covering up something with my sleep. I thought for a moment John had thrown a blanket over me, but closer inspection revealed it was a beach towel. John glanced back at me from his computer chair and said, "Sorry, I used my spare blanket when I got that leak in my car." I looked around for the source of that animal crunching noise. I found Molly laying behind the couch, with her head crammed inside an open box of Cap'n Crunch cereal. She was eating as fast as she could, trying to use her paws to keep the box in place. "You're letting her do that?" "Oh yeah, cereal is stale anyway. I don't have any dog food here." The dragon sat frozen on the television, the intro screen for a video game John had apparently been playing while I was slept on his couch. "What time is it?" "Around 8. I stood and felt my head swim. I rubbed my eyes and almost screamed in pain from the wound there. My shoulder felt like it had taken a bullet, and it seemed like a pair of elves was trying to escape my skull through my temples using tiny pickaxes. It wasn't the first time I had woken up at John's place feeling like this. My phone screamed. The display read, Amy. I closed my eyes, sighed, and answered. Hey, baby. Hi, David. I'm watching the news. What happened? Shouldn't you be in class? Amy had failed a pretty basic English class last semester because it was a morning class and she kept sleeping through it. She said, They canceled it. Oh, it's on again. Turn to CNN. I talked around the phone to John, told him to switch over the TV. He did, and watched as an early morning shot of the chaos at the hospital filled the screen. The name of the city was displayed along the bottom, National News. John turned up the sound, and we heard a female reporter saying, No history of drug use or mental illness. Frank Burgess has been with the department for 3 years. Authorities are combing the area for Burgess, but police say the number of wounds he sustained in the standoff make his turning up alive, quote, highly unlikely. Meanwhile, the hospital remains under quarantine due to unspecified infection risks that have only added to the anxiety of this shell-shocked community. They cut to a shot of our enormously fat chief of police giving a soundbite in front of a bank of microphones. To Amy, I said, Man, our chief of police is getting huge. Amy said, They said 13 people were hurt and I think 3 people died, but there could be more. Did you guys hear about this last night when it was all going on? A pause on my end. Too long. And finally I said, We heard about it, yeah. Uh-oh. What? David, where are you? Were you guys in on this? What? No, of course not. Why would you think that? David. No. It was nothing. Guy just went crazy, that's all. Are you lying? No. She said nothing. She and the therapist knew the same trick. Filling the silence, I said, I mean, we were there, but we weren't really involved. I knew it. I'm coming down. No, Amy, it's nothing. Really, it's over. We just happened to be in the area. I heard John say, Hey, it's me. I turned to the television. Hey, it's me. I turned to the television. Sure enough, John's face filled the screen. The reporter's voiceover covered the audio saying, But for every hour Burgess remains at large, fear and paranoia are bound to keep growing in this small city. On TV, John's voice faded in, and then we saw a small creature crawl into his mouth. It wasn't 2 feet away. I saw it clearly. The thing wasn't from this world. I don't mean alien. I mean probably interdimensional in nature. I think it's obvious from what happened tonight that this being possessed some powers of mind control. I closed my eyes again and groaned. Amy said, I'm coming down. I'll take the bus. Forget it. Your classes are more important. If you fail English again, I think they can kick you out of the country. I think it's in the Patriot Act. Gotta go, honey. I'm late for class. You said you didn't. We'll talk about it later. Bye-bye. I killed the phone and looked for my shoes. You going back home? I can't stay here, John. Yeah, but, you had that thing in your house. You think there's another one? I don't know, but what do you want me to do? Have the place sprayed? No, I'm just saying that thing, it crawled inside Frankie and seemed to take him over. Well, that thing turned up in your bed. Are you assuming that's an accident? Because maybe we should consider that it was there for you. I can always trust John to think of things like this. It don't matter, okay? Your couch isn't long enough. It kills my neck on the armrest, so it's moot. Well, you're not getting the bed. I took away Molly's cereal box, which was now just empty cardboard bent to the shape of a dog head. I said, You sounded crazy on the news, by the way. I hope you know that. What? I was telling the truth. To what purpose exactly? The only people who'll be convinced by that are people who are already nuts. I can see you've got your blog up right now. For what? So you can tell the whole nonsense story to be one more job ranting on the internet? It doesn't do anybody any good. It just makes you look crazy. It makes both of us look crazy. Hey, aren't you going to be late for your court-mandated therapist appointment? Fuck you. I glanced at my watch. He was right. The drive through town was surreal. I had to go past the hospital. Okay, I didn't have to, but curiosity got the better of me. And it had the air of natural disaster. News vans were parked outside of barriers that were blocking the street. Cops were at a checkpoint, directing traffic away from the parking garage entrance. 3 blocks later, I had to wait at an intersection for 5 minutes while a row of green trucks rumbled past. Military. I suddenly wanted to get far away from there. I had half hoped I would find the psychiatrist's office closed today, as if the aftermath of a shooting rampage would be treated like a national holiday. No such luck. People gotta make a paycheck, I guess. I barged in before I realized there was somebody else in the waiting room. Should have looked in through the window or something. I would have waited outside if I'd known, since the potential for really awkward conversation seemed pretty high in the waiting room of a psychiatrist's office. I tried to think of a plausible excuse for turning around and leaving. The best I came up with was to grab the potted plant in the corner and just walk out as if I was a rental I was repossessing. I decided not to. The lady in the waiting room didn't even turn to me when I came in. She was transfixed by a television in the corner turned to Fox News, covering the shooting. Jesus, slow news day. People get shot all the time, right? I found a chair as far away from her as possible. I grabbed a magazine and held it in front of my face. Seemed to be a lot of articles about wedding dresses. It's happening all over, you know, said the woman from the other side of the room. She was probably 45 or so, hair a desperate shade of blonde. I said, what is? Demon possession. All over the world. You see news from the Middle East and such, and you can see it spreading like wildfire. Uh-huh. It's easier now that all the souls are gone. I flipped through the pages of my bridal magazine, acting engrossed in the ads. The only thing worse than always being the craziest person in the room is when suddenly you're alone with someone crazier. She was still talking. Did you know the rapture happened already? In 1961, the Lord called all the souls up to heaven, but the bodies were left behind. That's why the people walking around today don't seem to have souls. It's because they don't. You see that story last week? The man who was being chased by the police in a stolen car? There was a newborn baby in the back seat. He just threw it out the window. A baby. People these days are just common animals, because their human souls are gone, see? I lowered the magazine and said, that's not a bad theory, actually. They called it the mark of the beast, but they don't need a mark. They reveal themselves as beasts with time. The door to the office creaked open, and out walked a gorgeous teenage girl. For a baffled second, I thought this was somehow my therapist. Like, maybe she was filling in today. But of course, she was just a patient, and Dr. Tennant was right behind her. The crazy woman in the waiting room stood and thanked the doctor and walked out with the girl. The lady hadn't been there for treatment. She was just giving her daughter a ride. Right off, Dr. Tennant asked, what happened to your eye? I'm sorry, I'm doing the voice. What happened to your eye? Got in a fight with John. He said counseling was a waste of time, and I told him I'd be damned if I heard him insult you and your profession. You look like you haven't slept. How can I, with what's going on? Have you been watching the news today? Do you know if they found Frankie? He wasn't expected to live, was he? Did you know him? What? No, why would I have known him? You called him Frankie. Well, I went to high school with him, but that was years ago. I didn't have anything to do with what happened, if that's what you mean. Not at all. Because I didn't. I'm sorry if I made you feel accused. I glanced out the window at the exact moment a green truck rumbled by on the street outside. Why are there so many army trucks? This all seems like an overreaction, don't you think? Not letting me change the subject, Tennant said, I would like to see you come back to what you talked about last time. About having to hide your true self from the world and feeling like you are powerless to become the type of person who would not have to hide. Just now, you seemed to feel I was accusing you. I'd like to talk about that if we can. I stared out the window and chewed a fingernail. Man, I did not want to be here. In this office. In this town. In this life. I wanted to just walk out. I knew at some point the cops were going to scoop up John. He'd appeared on goddamn television right in the area they were trying to quarantine, and that meant eventually they'd come get me too. What the hell was I doing here? Because you have nowhere else to go. I said, I don't know. 24 hours ago, I'm sitting here trying to justify believing crazy things, and one day later, the whole town has gone crazy. So in my mind, the rest of the world has now caught up to my craziness, which means I should be set free. I rubbed my itchy eyes and said, There are real monsters, Doc. I'm too tired today to say anything else. He said, I read some of the things you and your friend posted on the internet. Sometimes you speak of yourself as if you are a freak or a monster. Well, metaphorically, I mean, aren't we all? The woman in the waiting room just now basically told me the same thing. An incident like last night's always brings out those kinds of feelings, I suppose. I considered for a moment and said, Can I ask you a question, Doc? Of course. What would you say if I asked to use your computer there, or your desk, right now, without having a chance to delete anything? Of course, there is confidential patient information here that I couldn't... Let's say that I could promise I wouldn't look at any of that. In fact, let's just say that I want to look at your internet browser history. How would you feel about that? It would be an invasion of privacy, of course, and I have credit cards and logins. I'm talking about porn, Doc. Would I find nasty schoolgirl porn in there? Maybe interracial stuff? Incest fantasies? I feel like you're trying to get a reaction from me. If you're not feeling like going through with the session, we can continue on Monday. No, listen. When I'm with Amy and I ask to borrow her computer, she passes it right over. No questions asked, no hesitation. She could sit there and look over my shoulder and watch me sift through every single file, and she wouldn't flinch. She has nothing to hide. It'd be the same if I had a machine that could peer into her mind. She'd be fine with it. She's comfortable with what she is. But on the other hand, if she's visiting and she asks to use my laptop, man, there is so much depraved shit on there that if she saw it all, she'd call the cops. If she could see what goes through my mind when I see another girl walk by, she'd burst into tears. He nodded. So, you feel like you have to hide a part of yourself and she doesn't. I'm saying it's like that with everybody. There are two kinds of people on planet Earth, Batman and Iron Man. Batman has a secret identity, right? So Bruce Wayne has to walk around every second of every day knowing that if somebody finds out his secret, his family is dead. His friends are dead. Everyone he loves gets tortured to death by costumed supervillains. And he has to live with the weight of that secret every day. That tension gnawing in his guts. But not Tony Stark. He's open about who he is. He tells the world he's Iron Man. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't have that shadow hanging over him. He doesn't have to spend energy building up those walls of lies around himself. You're one or the other. Either you're one of those people who has to hide your real self because it could ruin you if it came out, because if your secret fetishes or addictions or crimes, or if you're not one of those people, and the two people aren't even living in the same universe. You believe you're Batman? I closed my eyes. What did you say the hourly rate for these sessions was again? I mean, you're in that category. You feel like the people around you would react badly if they knew what you really thought and believed. Not because they'll think I'm crazy. They already think that. But because of how they would react once they knew the truth. You know how people are. That's what you write books about, right? Group panics and all that. You think the truth would cause mass hysteria? I shrugged and nodded toward the window. Look out there. You'll see. He said, That's actually more true than you know. Don't repeat this, but it appears that I'm going to be called in to work on this case. The hospital shooting, I mean. What, like as a profile or something? Oh, no. I'd be offering my assistance in dealing with the public. It's the panic that is the primary concern, you see. Making sure no one gets a hair trigger, some poor soul waiting by their back door with a hunting rifle shooting at a shadowy shape in the backyard that turns out to be their neighbor. Fear can be fatal, and, as I suppose you see on my bookshelf, I'm something of an expert. I thought, that has to be nice, to have a job where fear is something that happens to other people. I stared out the window and said, Do you ever get scared, Dr. Tennant? Of course. But you know these sessions aren't about me. And besides, in your world, everything has some harmless explanation, right? It's always bees. Even this thing with Frankie, your job will be what? To go up to a bank of microphones and assure everybody that it's all bees? You feel like I was being dismissive of your fears. I apologize if so. So, does anything scare you, Doctor? Anything irrational? Of course. Here, I'll volunteer my most embarrassing example. I feel like I owe it to you, to make up for the bee story. Are you a fan of science fiction? I don't know. My girlfriend is. All right. But you know Star Trek, and Beam Me Up, Scotty, how they can teleport people around? Yeah, the transporters. Do you know how they work? Just special effects, CGI, or whatever they use? No, I mean within the universe of the show. They work by breaking down your molecules, zapping you over a beam, and putting you back together on the other end. Sure. That is what scares me. I can't watch it. I find it too disturbing. I shrugged. I don't get it. 2 pages. Well, think about it. Your body is just made up of a few different types of atoms. carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and so on. So this transporter machine, there is no reason in the world to break down all of those atoms and then send those specific atoms thousands of miles away. One oxygen atom is the same as another. So what it does is send the blueprint for your body across the beam. Then it reassembles you at the destination, out of whatever atom it has nearby. So, if there is carbon and hydrogen on the planet you're beaming down to, it'll just put you together out of whatever it has on hand, because you get the exact same result. Sure. So, it's more like sending a fax than mailing a letter, only the transporter is a fax machine that shreds the original. Your original body, along with your brain, gets vaporized, which means what comes out the other end isn't you. It's an exact copy that the machine made of a man who is now dead, his atoms floating freely around the interior of the ship. Only within the universe of the show, nobody knows this. Meanwhile, you are dead. Dead for eternity. All of your memories and emotions and personality end right there on that platform forever. Your wife and children and friends will never see you again. What they will see is this unnatural photocopy of you that emerged from the other end. And in fact, since transport technology is used routinely, all of the people you see on that ship are copies of long-dead, vaporized crew members. And no one even figures it out. They all continue to blithely step into this machine that kills 100% of the people who use it. But nobody realizes it because each time it spits out a perfect replacement for the victim at the other end. I stared at him. Why did you tell me that? He shrugged. You asked. His face showed nothing. I thought of the Asian guy, casually disappearing into the magic burrito door, walking out somewhere else, and in that moment I almost asked Tennant what he knew and who he was. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Ooh, need a sip of my drink. Ah. 18 hours prior to outbreak. Hours went by, and the cops continued to not show up at either my house or John's apartment. All morning, I was worried sick about what I would say when they brought me in, but then afternoon came, and I was even more worried about the fact that they weren't coming after us. That means things had gotten so out of control that they were no longer on their list of priorities. Oh, and as a quick aside, just for the ending story of that last chapter, there actually was an episode where they dealt with the scanner the transporter malfunctioning, and you had two Rikers, and they had to figure out what to do with the one that was the original, and they wound up fighting each other. It was I need to rewatch that episode sometime, but yeah, that actually is the thing they address in the show briefly, and then it goes back to nobody really caring. Let's see. Hours went by, and the cops continued to not show up at either my house or John's apartment. Oh, I read this. Come mid-afternoon, I found myself at work, standing behind a counter, trying to peel the magnetic anti-theft tag off a DVD with my fingernail. A DVD is a disc that plays movies, if they don't have those by the time you read this. I know I've complained about the pain in my eye and shoulder more than once, but I want to point out that the bite on my leg was also starting to hurt like a son of a bitch. I would have called in sick, but I had used up all my sick days for the year and couldn't take off again until January. I take a lot of sick days, most of them self-declared mental health days, meaning I wake up in a mood that I know will lead me to assault the very first person who asks me if the 2-day rentals have to be back on Wednesday or Thursday. I had worked at Wally's Video for 5 years, been a manager for 2. I started right after I dropped out of college. At the time, I had heard that Quentin Tarantino got discovered while working at a video store, and I think I had it in my head to try to work there and write a screenplay. It was going to be about a cop in the future with a sentient flamethrower for an arm. At age 19, that seemed like a pretty sound plan. The thing about not having parents is you don't have anyone to tell you you're heading down a path paved with grossly inaccurate expectations of what the world owes you. The people who raised me, and I'll leave their names out of this, they did what they could. Nice people, real religious, kind of treated me like I was a little African refugee kid they had rescued. They knew my story, knew that I had never known my dad. Years later, when I got in trouble at school and got kicked out because of that kid that died, they were real supportive. They took my side all the way through. Then, shortly after, they moved to Florida and hinted that maybe things would be better if I stayed behind. My birth mom is living in Arizona, I think, staying with a dozen other people in an arrangement that could be called a compound. She sent me a letter 2 years ago, 30 pages scribbled on lined notebook paper. I couldn't make it past the first paragraph. I skipped down to the last sentence, which was, I hope you are stockpiling ammunition, like I told you. The forces of the Antichrist will first seek to disarm us. I scraped the plastic theft sticker off the DVD, put it back in its case, then picked another case off the stack, pulled out the disc, started scraping off the tag. I looked around, saw there was only one customer in the store, a guy wearing a cowboy hat. His jeans looked like they were painted on. The TV we had mounted in the far corner of the store was supposed to be playing a promotional DVD, but I had switched it over to the headline news, with the sound down to the closed captioning turned on. They had been going back to the hospital shooting every 20 minutes or so. That cowboy with the tight pants came up to the counter with a copy of Basic Instinct 2 and 2001: A Space Odyssey. How could he walk in those jeans? Did they inflate when he farted? I glanced up at the TV and saw a reporter standing in front of a street barricade. Closed captioning mentioned something about cops having to break up an angry crowd trying to get in to see loved ones at the hospital. The cowboy gave me his membership card, and I punched in the number. His account came up as James Dupree. Overdue, 0. Account status, A. Comments. This man has worn the same trousers since he was a toddler. Many memos had circulated at Wally's about abusing the customer comment box on this computer. We have John to thank for that. He worked here a few years ago after I begged the manager to let him on. John was fired a few months later, but not before he managed to add something to the comment field for pretty much every single customer he served. Name, Carl Gass. Comments, if he doesn't have late charges, and you tell him that he does, he loses his fucking mind. Name, Lisa Franks. Comments, had sex with her on 11/15. Name, Cara Bullock. Comments, thinks I have an English accent. Don't forget. Name, Chet Berark. Comments, always smells like fish. I think he fishes for a living. He's sensitive about it too, so don't bring it up. Name, Rob Arnold. Comments, it's the white Patrick Ewing. Or Ewing, sorry, I read the name wrong. Name, Cheryl Mackey. Comments, had sex with her on 7/16. I gave the cowboy his change, glancing over his shoulder at the TV every chance I could. They were back to old footage from the hospital, the camera showing close-ups of bullet holes in walls and shell casings on the floor. The cowboy turned to follow my gaze, saw the TV. That's some scary shit, ain't it? I said, yeah. Whole world's come to an end, that's what I think. Yeah, probably. I'm not going to read this next one. I'm going to paraphrase. N-word in the White House. Yeah, the cowboy left. He stuffed his wallet into his back pocket, and I imagined it shooting back out again, squeezed by the sheer pressure of the fabric. I grabbed a DVD and went back to the peeling off stickers. I had gotten written up 6 weeks ago because more DVDs were stolen on my watch than either of the two managers. Not sure what I was supposed to be doing to stop it, other than running out and tackling the kids who tried to walk out with the goods. The problem, I decided, was the magnetic anti-theft tags that would activate the door alarm where in the DVD cases, not on the discs. So it only took the thieves minutes to figure out they just had to pop the disc out of the case and stuff it in their pocket, leaving the case and the theft tag behind. Yes, this town has people who are actually too poor to afford a computer and internet connection to just pirate the movies that way. So I wrote up this angry email to the head office saying the anti-theft system was idiotic and that if they were serious about people not stealing discs, then they should put the anti-theft tags on the discs themselves. They agreed, and I and 2 other employees spent about 12 hours sticking these stiff little stickers to all the new releases in the store. The plan worked beautifully. That is, until last Thursday when a customer brought in a disc that had scratched to hell because the theft sticker came unstuck inside his DVD player. It jammed the little tray when it tried to eject the disc and he had to pry it out. 2 days later, a customer brought in a broken DVD player. When this disc got stuck thanks to the sticker, he wound up breaking the disc tray on the machine trying to free it. I wasn't at the store that day. I was one of my many sick days. But when I came back, I was greeted by 27 emails from managers and regional managers and other people I had never heard before telling me that every anti-theft sticker had to be removed from every DVD by November 5th. I bring this up in case you were wondering why in the holy hell I felt the need to come into work in the middle of what appeared to be some kind of monster infestation. The answer is that if I took one more sick day, I would be fired, and if I didn't get these stickers off by the deadline, I would be fired, and even if I could talk my way out of one firing, I was sure as hell couldn't talk my way out of both. And if I was fired, soon after, society would decide I wasn't earning my electricity and water and my house and my food. And they'd be right. If you think that's a bad reason to come to work in the middle of all this, then I'm guessing you're still living with mom and dad. I glanced up at the TV and saw something new. Security camera footage from inside the hospital, in color, but in a frame rate that made the people appear to blink down the hallway, teleporting 5 feet at a time. There was a shot of a woman running in terror. They cut back to the studio and some older guy in a suit, an expert of some kind they had brought in. Then they cut back to the security video and I froze. I heard the DVD I was holding fall to the counter. Did I just see that? They played it again. The first frame was Frankie in the hall of the hospital, holding a nurse around the throat. The frames rolled forward. A security guard came into frame, hand out, trying to talk Frankie down. Next frame, same players, limbs in different positions. It looked to be about 1 frame per second. The next frame was what got me. At the top of the screen appeared a man in black, and I mean all black head to toe, solid black shape. Next frame, 1 second later, he was gone. I stared. They cut back to the anchor. The closed captioning lagged behind, and I didn't think I saw any mention of the mysterious figure in the hall. My cell phone screamed. I picked up. Yeah? John said Dave. John said, Dave? Can you get to a television? We got one here. I saw it. The thing in the hall? Yeah, man in black. Shadow Man. Whatever. Man, this isn't a joke anymore. It wasn't a joke before, John. A bunch of people died. You know what I mean. You better sleep with your crossbow tonight. I don't have the crossbow. The cops confiscated it, remember? Okay, then I should come over. I'll bring my lighter. We'll sleep in shifts. No. Wait, bring your what? Come on, man. How do you know Frankie won't show up there? He's surely dead by now. I didn't say he wasn't. I'm busy, John. Sure. I'll try coming up with a plan. Whatever. Watch the shadows. Hey, John, don't do anything stupid. I was talking to a dead phone. Mm. 17 hours prior to the outbreak. Disclaimer. The following sequence of events was relayed by John to the author after the fact, and no attempt was made to corroborate this version of events through witness interviews. While there is no evidence directly contradicting any of this account, much of it seems highly unlikely. John wound up needing 5 hours to find Frankie Burgess. That may sound impressive to you considering there were rows of trained, uniformed men fanning out across several square miles around the hospital all day Friday without success, but it actually took longer than John was hoping. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that he found himself face to face with Frankie across a pane of dirty glass, and he had been hoping to have the whole situation wrapped up while it was still daylight. Night is when bad things happen in Undisclosed. Well, bad things also happen in the daytime, but at least you can see where you're going when you're running away. Anyway, in early November, night falls at around 6. So, after getting off the phone with Dave at the video store at 3, John had spent an hour driving around in his caddy, getting a sense of the situation around town. The manhunt, which seemed to involve several hundred police, volunteers, and National Guardsmen, appeared to be focused on the wooded area east of the hospital and the empty houses and trailers around it. It made sense from their point of view, he supposed. They were looking for a spot where a deranged and wounded man would crawl off to die. But they weren't going to find Frankie. It wasn't going to be that easy. There were local cops who had to know better, who had to know that the situation in the hospital had been that other thing, the kind of business that pops up in Undisclosed every few years when the town decides to start coloring outside the lines. John was picturing the chief trying to nudge the National Guard in that direction, maybe suggesting that they expand the search, and that maybe additional precautions should be taken with the quarantine. Special hearing protection, perhaps, or hazmat suits, and instead of just the hospital, maybe rope off the whole town, or state. But then that would lead to a lot of awkward questions, and the chief would quickly back down and just pray that the whole thing would come to nothing, if only it ever worked out that way. John, on the other hand, was thinking monster from the start, since, the situation was caused by a monster. It was just a matter of figuring out what kind of monster it was. There are really only two kinds of monsters in the world, which you already know if you've been watching horror movies. Breeders and non-breeders. So, for instance, Frankenstein's monster would fall into the second category if he was real. He's a freak, a singular being, and once you kill him, he's gone. Problem solved. The breeders are an exponentially bigger problem. Within that group, you've got slow breeders like vampires, if they were real, which they're not, which breed in a small-scale controlled way, but mainly to avoid extinction rather than spread. But then you've got the fast breeders like zombies, if they existed, which they don't, where breeding is all they do. They are basically walking epidemics, and are the worst of the worst case scenarios because such a creature could, hypothetically, wipe out civilization. This is humanity's greatest fear, which is why, at the moment, half the world's horror novels, movie posters, and video games have zombies on the cover. So in any situation like this, Step 1 is to find out what category of creature you're dealing with. Step 2 is to anticipate what that creature is going to do next, based on what you determined in Step 1. Then, Step 3 is you find out if the thing can be killed with a chainsaw. This particular case was a fairly straightforward situation of a small creature taking over a man's head and controlling his body. That is a really specific thing for a creature to do, John thought, requiring countless specialized biological adaptations. So, it was unlikely that this was just some kind of Frankenstein genetic mistake with no goal beyond stumbling around biting people until somebody shot it enough times. So, logically, that would mean it was a breeder, and that the taking over of a human body was done to facilitate breeding. What had John worried was that the little shit looked like an insect, and in the normal course of things, insects are notoriously fast breeders. So, it could be a worst-case scenario. John suspected that somebody up the ladder had already arrived in that conclusion, which is why, on this fine autumn afternoon, you couldn't pull up to a stoplight in undisclosed without finding yourself in a Humvee sandwich. It was presumably why the hospital had been roped off. So, how do we find Frankie? In John's estimation, that would come down to how much of Frankie's brain was still intact. His body still functioned despite the damage it had taken. So the basic nervous and muscular systems must still have been operated by his own human brain. So, there surely had to be some remnant of Frankie's instincts and impulses in there, and Frankie was a cop. John could think of 5 shops in town that sold donuts, none of which said they had seen Frankie when John called. Where else did cops eat? John drove past a half-dozen fast food franchises and didn't see Frankie inside when he passed. It was getting frustrating. Only 2 hours of light left now. Then, John swung by a Waffle House and found what he was looking for. Waffles. He was good and hungry by that point, and let's face it, it had been a eat breakfast for dinner kind of day. Blueberry waffles, hash browns, washed down with a beer he found in his jacket. Around 5, John dropped by Munch's trailer. Mitch Munch Lombard was one of 3 bass players in John's band 3 Arm Sally, and had been since high school. He was also a volunteer firefighter, which meant he had a police band scanner at his place. John figured he could stay on top of the manhunt and come up with a new plan. There were a bunch of dudes there already, and everybody was playing Guitar Hero and drinking the purple mix-up of 7-Up and cough syrup that sent John to the hospital last year. Steve Gammon came by with a huge bag of frozen McNuggets he had stolen from the McDonald's where he worked. They fired up the Fry Daddy and ate McNuggets for an hour. There was a Japanese chick there who was either drunk or just really goofy. Either way, she could barely stand up and laughed at everything that happened. John took a hit of something and that he realized gave him the ability to speak Japanese to the girl, and every time he did, she laughed so hard she almost pissed herself. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a line. The ability to speak Japanese, or at least he thought he did it. Or he thought it did. He made the words that sounded like Japanese to the girl, and every time he did, she laughed so hard she almost pissed herself. He hadn't forgotten his mission. Occasionally, John would hear excited voices over the police scanner and would make everybody be quiet, but eventually, everybody got so fucked up that they wouldn't do it. Head Feingold and his girlfriend Jenny McCormick stopped by with a case of wine she won in a contest, and it was a party all of a sudden. A while later, Head went outside to puke and fell asleep on the deck. John found himself making out with a Japanese girl, but she started calling him by a different name, and he suddenly realized she had been confusing him with another guy all night. Do all white people look the same to the Japanese? John got off the sofa and told her he had to use the bathroom, then quietly threw on his jacket and headed for the door. Dark outside. Damn it. John saw Head passed out on the deck, under the grill. He turned around, went back into the trailer, grabbed a comforter and a pillow. He went back out to the deck where Head lay and put the blanket over him and wedged the pillow under his head. Just as he was about to leave again, John heard the scanner crackle to life behind him. The dispatcher was reporting that staff out at the turkey farm west of town were complaining that some vagrant was stealing turkeys. The responding cops said that the coded way cops do, that they had bigger fish to fry. John, on the other hand, jumped off the deck and threw himself into his old Cadillac. He buckled his seatbelt, which he always did because he never knew when he would need to ramp something. He made the engine growl and told the headlights to fuck the night. John had inherited the old Cadillac from a great-uncle who passed away the previous summer. There had been quite a heated debate among the family about who would get stuck with the terrible car, as no one wanted to have to deal with the process of scrapping it. John volunteered and had been driving it ever since. Creedence Clearwater Revival blasted from an old cassette as John bumped down the highway. He hated Creedence, but Uncle Pat loved them, apparently. Or maybe that was just the last tape he had been listening to when all the buttons on the ancient sound system stopped working. Either way, the tape was now in permanent play mode, playing through side A, reaching the end, automatically reversing and playing side B. Forever. As loud as it would go. You couldn't stop it, you couldn't eject it. Where there should have been a volume knob, there was only an empty hole, not even a little shaft that you could maybe grab with a pair of needle-nose pliers. On each end of the caddy's dash were large lumps where John had wadded up towels and held them over the speakers with electrician's tape, hoping to muffle the sound. It did not. Creedence was determined to be heard. John headed south down the highway, left onto a curve that transitioned to a rural paved road with no painted lines, and across the overpass. Then around the lake, heading toward a row of enormous low blue buildings. Turkey Factory. There was a gravel lane to the right, and John took it so hard he thought he was going up on two wheels. The caddy bumped and growled on the dirt road, rear end fishtailing like it was on ice, bits of gravel smacking the floorboards with a sound like popcorn. John scanned the ground for any signs of Frankie. He wasn't feeling so good. The waffles and hash browns and beer and McNuggets and wine and the Japanese girl's chapstick started hitting in his gut. Or sitting hard in his gut. Whump. Oh shit! He had hit somebody. They were writhing on the hood of John's they're writhing on the hood as John's feet stomped hard trying to find the brake pedal. A face was pressed against the windshield, and it was Frankie! Shit! John slammed on the brakes, and the caddy spun out on the gravel. Frankie held on. John reached into his backseat for the chainsaw, then realized there was no chainsaw in the backseat because he had forgotten to drop by Dave's place to get it from his tool shed. Frankie reached around through the driver's side window and snatched at John's shirt. John shrugged away from the hand and dove for the opposite door, pushing his way out and rolling onto the ground. He ran. John's fists pumped towards the light of the turkey building, pulling frozen breaths around the cigarette butts piled up in his lungs. He heard footsteps behind him. John reached the building. There was the door. John yanked it open. The fucking smell. Holy shit. It was one of those stinks that seems to generate its own warmth. Mold and poop and rotten meat. It hit him like a wall. It looked for a moment like there was a foot of snow inside the building, just white as far as the eye could see in that impossibly huge space. Turkeys. Turkeys so thick you couldn't see the ground. White feathers and thin little twitchy heads and, here and there, a rustling of flapping wings. Birds jumping and thrashing and squawking and flailing through the air, demonstrating turkey flight as one of God's failures. John was running again, kicking through turkeys, sucking in air, accidentally eating a feather, looking for a weapon. Where does the turkey farm keep the chainsaws? Thinking fast, John clutched at the nearest turkey, spun and hurled it at his pursuer. Frankie caught the bird like a flapping medicine ball, studied it, then turned and ran out of the building. God damn it, yelled somebody from behind John. You gave him another turkey. You're paying for it. It was a couple of guys in gray coveralls. To the one who looked like he spoke English, John said, Weapons. We need weapons. That's the guy. Frankie. He'll be back after he eats that turkey. Get a chain. Ow! A turkey bit him in the ankle. Wait. Not a turkey. One of those fucking spider monsters. Shit! John kicked the spider off his shoe, hard enough that he expected it to go flying like a punted football, but it was kind of clinging to his shoe, and it only landed about 10 feet away. One of the dudes in coveralls behind him started shouting something in Spanish. John turned to them and said, "Kill it! Help me kill that thing! I think Frankie shit it!" The dudes seemed to be running away. Hopefully they'd come back with a chainsaw. John backed up, realizing he kicked the spider to the spot where it had been between him and the door. More flapping and gobbling. The turkeys were going crazy where the spider had landed. John could see the spider appeared to be attached to a turkey somehow. Then, one of the spider's legs shot out, becoming rigid and 10 times as long. It impaled 4 turkeys, as if on a skewer, punching through them with little gray sprays of blood and feather. The spider extended another tentacle, and did it again. 4 more turkeys, skewered. Again. Now there were 4 rows of turkeys joined up at the central point where the spider's body was. The X-shaped cluster of turkeys rose as one body as tall as a man. 2 rows of turkeys forming legs, 2 forming arms. The turkey Voltron took tentative, lumbering steps toward John. He couldn't help noticing that after a few steps, the 2 turkeys that was using his feet had been pulverized into pink feathery mess. John stood there, frozen for several seconds, while he tried to decide if this was in fact happening. He decided that running was the best option either way. He ran across the building, spotting another door on the opposite wall, kicking turkeys as he went. He shoved through the door, and, as if in answer to a prayer he had been too drunk and stoned to pray, there sat a filthy white pickup truck with a faded cartoon turkey on the door, the engine running. John threw himself into the driver's seat, grabbing the gear shift on the steering column, and realized it was the turn signal. He looked down to find the stick on the floor when a bundle of wings, feathers, and stench punched him in the face. He'd been hit in the jaw by a turkey fist. John slapped at the turkey, trying to shove it back out the window, unsuccessfully. He found the crank to roll up the window, and the turkey gobbled frantically as it was squeezed by the glass. Behind it was the row of turkeys and the rest of the turkey man's body. John threw the truck in gear and stepped on the gas, hauling the thrashing body of the possessed turkeys alongside. Steering with his right hand and punching a confused fist turkey with his left, John smashed through a chain-link fence and plowed through a stack of bags of turkey feed. He cranked the wheel, nearly crashed right into the building he had just left, and found himself heading back toward the overpass. Wind gushing through the gap in the window and filling the interior of the truck with feathers. The road curved, but John didn't, and suddenly he was bouncing over rough terrain, the turkey collective exploding in angry gobbles with each bump. And then the terrain was gone. He was tilting in the air. Impact. The steering wheel punching him in the face. John heard a splash. He had time to think, Frankie is alive, and Dave doesn't know it, before everything went black. Uh-oh. I got bots in my chat. Let me... No, I don't want a copy message. No, I don't want a copy message. Oh my god. Alright. Do I want to become famous? I don't know. Do you want to become banned? How... Okay, I've done this before. Is it middle mouse button? No. Damn it. How come it's not letting me... 0 bans. Sure. Why? Oh my god. Why? Oh, fuck me. Hang on a second. Let me mark my place because I can't figure out why it's not letting me ban. I don't want a copy message. Here we go. Okay, so Max Truth 3 is a bot. I'm reporting. Spam bots next. Okay. Can use more, definitely bots. And spam. I can't select multiple. Okay. Bots next. Please include timestamp if applicable. Geez, it was like 322. Submit report. Alright. Yeah, block this user. Okay. Did it work? Did it not work? It didn't work. Are you fucking kidding me? I can't immediately ban them? Block. Spam. Confirm. Report. Spam. I miss being able to immediately ban them and send the report as one thing. Submit report. Okay. Spam. Confirm. Okay. They should be blocked now? I don't know why it didn't... I don't know why it didn't let me do the thing where I can fucking... Blah. Hey, cat. Wait, shouldn't you be asleep by now? I mean, I woke up 12 hours ago. That's why I'm still awake. You ought to be getting some rest. Especially if you're going to stream. I will absolutely... You woke up to the sound of panic tentacles. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you up. Yeah, I've been trying to... I reported these two bots, and I banned them, or I blocked them, but it won't let me ban them, and I don't understand why. Something they did to both OBS's Stream Manager. Ban no space. Ask the... Okay. Alright. Ban Vitherful. Add their name. Okay. Oh, at their name. Ban at Vitherful. Is it BAM space at Vitherful? Normally when it bans, it would also delete their messages? I don't know. Oh well. It's not working. I don't know why it's not working. Oh well. Shit. Can I? How do I... Oh, how do I... Oh, how do I... Show mod icons. Chat appearance. View requests. Oh. Damn it. Oh well. They've been blocked and banned. As long as they don't... Or, I mean, they haven't been banned, but they've been blocked and reported. I just don't understand why OBS is not letting me... Normally, it had a thing where I could click it. Like... And it would bring up a little thing for me to do. And I could also do it on my phone, because I have that up. But the phone's not doing it. Phone's only giving me view info, mention whisper, gift a subscription, unblock, and report. So I don't know. That's weird. Yeah, that's one change I don't care for. I mean, I like that they made reporting them fairly quick, but yeah. Anyway. Oh well. See, it's 3:30. I'm gonna finish this chapter and then we'll give somebody a little raid. Oh, I finished a chapter. What the heck? Okay, so we know that Frankie is alive and Dave doesn't know it. Okay, 12 hours prior to outbreak. At around 9 p.m., I locked up Wally's. I hadn't heard from John since he'd called in the afternoon, which I considered to be a good thing since it meant he had probably forgotten about the whole thing and fell asleep on his sofa watching UFC fights. Watch the shadows. That had been the advice from John. Please. This is freaking undisclosed. That's like reminding a passenger on a Brooklyn subway not to fondle the hobos in their bathing suit area. I went home and did a room-by-room search of the house. Nothing out of the ordinary. Also, nothing in any of the closets. or in the attic. At least as far as I could tell, from sweeping the place with a flashlight from the hatch in the hallway. I decided I should check the crawl space under the house, and then I decided fuck that. Still, I left every light on. I remembered the power outage that accompanied the little bastard showing up last time, and I was ready for that too. I had an LED flashlight in my pocket, compact but powerful enough to light up half the backyard, and a bundle of 6 red road flares next to the bed that I had grabbed from my stash in the tool shed. I sat on the bed so that my back was nestled in the corner, the whole room visible from there. I got out my laptop. From the webcam window, Amy said, "What happened to your eye?" I told my psychiatrist about you. She got jealous and came at me with a knife. It was the hospital thing, wasn't it? No. I got a bus ticket. I'm coming down tomorrow. Amy, no, get a refund. It's nothing. The whole thing was overblown. A guy just went crazy and shot some dudes. It's not what John said on TV. That's between me and John. You know how he says some shit sometimes. The news says the army is there. It's just the National Guard or something. They're just trying to reassure people. After 9/11, the strategy was always been to overreact to every little thing rather than risk being wrong once. So what happened? It's nothing. A guy went crazy and it was scary and now it's over. Really. Okay, I'm still coming down, by the way. You need me. You're upset and I can tell. I've seen you like this before. You're scared and you're trying to act like you're not. I sighed. If I tell you what's going on, will you back off? Maybe. After a long dramatic silence, I said, I saw something last night. It kind of disturbed me. Her eyes lit up. Really? What? John, he accidentally sent me a picture of his dick. She wrinkled her nose. Ew, you sure it was an accident? I knew you'd find a way to make it worse, dear. She said, you look terrible. I just needed to sleep. I needed to hear your voice first, that's all. Aw, that's sweet. What do you want to talk about? I glanced out the window again. No stars tonight. I said, just hypothetically, you'd be okay without me, right? Seriously, if something were to happen to me, you'd move on, find somebody better? I hate when you get in these moods, Dave. Just tell me you'll be okay. I'll sleep better. I love you. I love you too. I'll be down tomorrow. 11 hours, 45 minutes prior to outbreak. John's feet were wet. It was dark. He tried to remember where he was. He had passed out, or had he passed out in the kiddie pool again? Water was running over his shoulder. Hey, there's a steering wheel. Okay, so he was in a vehicle of some kind. He couldn't see shit out of the windshield. Feet freezing. Something racing past the glass. Bubbles? John's knees were getting cold now. He reached down and dunked his hand in water and thought, oh shit, I am underwater here, Jesus, oh Jesus. His head was all muddled and he started slapping stupidly around the unfamiliar console. He turned the windshield wipers on. No effect. More bursts of bubbles flew past the windshield as his precious air escaped through 100 cracks in a craft not made to be submerged. My air, John thought crazily. That is my air leaving. Belatedly, he realized the water soaking his left arm was pouring in from the partly open window next to him. He turned toward the door and took a face full of wet turkey. John shoved it aside and clutched at the door handle. He kicked at the door. It felt like somebody had stacked 2 tons of sand on the other side. He pushed with both feet and was shocked when more freezing water came raining in. Truck filling fast, submerged to his chest now. The cold water like needles in every muscle. John was hyperventilating, crazily trying to pull the door closed again to keep the water out. 5 seconds later, he was sucking in air out of a tiny gap in the roof of the truck, slurping metallic tasting, stagnant water with each breath, and then silence. Blinking. Underwater. Frozen from head to toe. For the first time since he emerged from the womb, John wanted to take a breath and was not allowed. My last air. Holy shit, I have tasted the last air of my life. That air is in my lungs, is the last air I will ever breathe, or I will ever get. This is bullshit, man. Suddenly, there was open water to his left. The door that had been impossible to open moments ago, having gently drifted open on its own. A huge bundle of connected, drowned turkeys floated there. John lunged toward the door, found to his horror that he was glued in place, and decided once and for all that this had to be a nightmare. Seatbelt! You still have your seatbelt on, you stupid bastard! His fingers were numb in the chilled water, making the task of freeing himself almost impossible. So dark. John realized he was seeing only by the dashboard lights, which were still on somehow. He mashed the seatbelt clasp, and after an eternity, felt the belt loosen. He was so thrilled by this that he celebrated by releasing all of the air he had been holding in his mouth. John watched his life run away from him in a swarm of silver bubbles. "No! Come back, my last air! Come back!" John frantically swam after his bubbles, shoving dead turkeys aside. Water in his nostrils, burning, the bubbles didn't float up, but rather flew off to his left, the assholes. He chased them. He had to get the air back. Seeing lights, brain shutting down, John swam after the bubbles and toward the light. Then he broke through the surface of the water. He blinked water out of his eyes and saw streetlights above him. He looked back and saw a pair of red taillights, only a couple of feet under the water, like the eyes of a lurking sea monster. The water was only about 8 feet deep, and he had only been about 5 seconds away from drowning in it. Jesus. John sloshed through the water, climbing the embankment and clawing at weeds to pull himself up as red and blue lights twirled their way toward him from the highway. Now they show up. An hour later, John found himself in handcuffs in the back of a squad car. He'd been totally unsuccessful in his attempts to impress upon the police that they needed to rope off everything in a 10-mile radius and set it on fire. He was equally unsuccessful in getting any of the cops to loan him a cell phone. His wouldn't turn on, and in fact, there was still quite a bit of water dripping out of it. He needed to get in touch with Dave. Another car pulled up. Not a cop car, a flashy silver sports car. A dude in plain clothes got out of it, flashed a badge, and talked to the cops. Ah, finally, they got the fancy police on the case. Now they'd get something done. The fancy policeman eventually came over to John's squad car and pulled open the door. "You're John, right?" John said, "Listen to me. You guys need to get to David Wong's..." Oops, I did get 2 pages that time. Shoot. You guys need to get to David Wong's house." John told him the address. "Frankie is still alive. He's mobile, and he's got shit crawling out of him. He's full of turkey now, and I think he's going to Dave's place next." Now, why don't you just calm down for a moment? I take it you've been drinking tonight? No more than usual. We're wasting time. Who brought you out here? I drove myself. I thought I'd find Frankie here, and I did. What did you drive? My Cadillac. Well, it's not here. You sure you didn't come with your friend David? You two are the monster guys, right? With the website and all that? Listen to me. I think David is at his house, and that if Frankie is heading there, you want to get there first. Uh-huh. Because you think Frankie will hurt Dave, because he has shit crawling out of him. I thought you said you heard of us. Dude, if you don't get over there and fast, Frankie is the one that's in danger. "6 hours prior to outbreak. I woke up in my bathroom, startled. I had nodded off while pooping. Long goddamn day. 3 in the morning now. I tried to call John. Got his voicemail, which was typical. John had set up his life perfectly so that he could get in touch with me anytime he needed something, but all of my calls to him were carefully screened. Everything always on his terms. I stumbled through the house, knowing that going to bed while it was still dark was out of the question, but at a loss what to do otherwise. The laptop was still on the bed, so I went to CNN's website and found the video clip of the report with the security camera footage, the walking shadow floating down the hall. 3 other people visible in the frame, none looking at the shadow or reacting in any way, just as Frankie didn't react when the alien bug thing was right in front of him, invisible. I moved the slider on the website's video player back and forth. Rewind, play. Rewind, play. A black ghost floating down a hospital hallway, and nobody notices. Forget it, this is ridiculous. I closed the laptop. I threw on a jacket and stuffed the flashlight and one flare in my inside pocket. By the time I got to the front door, Molly was at my knee, wagging her tail, sensing adventure. Together, we strode into the night. We walked 6 blocks to the late-night burrito stand. I leaned against a wall and ate from a wad of aluminum foil, occasionally grabbing chunks of chorizo and tossing them to Molly, who hurriedly swallowed each so she could immediately beg for another. There was a bottle of Red Mountain Dew at my feet. I glanced at my watch. Still more than 3 hours to kill until sunrise. I wrapped up the remaining half burrito and tossed it into the trash can. Molly watched this act of wastefulness with an expression like she had just seen her entire family die in a fire. I mopped orange grease off my hands with a half-dozen napkins. At this hour, there were 5 other people eating at the tables in front of the burrito window. This establishment's entire business model was catching the drunks who were pushed out of the bars when they closed at 2. There was a pair of couples that looked college age. all 4 of them drunk off their asses, celebrating the fact that they would be young and pretty forever and ever. Then there was a short, fat guy off by himself in a biker jacket. I found his Harley behind him in the parking lot. I wondered what his story was. Maybe he's riding across the country and will be in Ohio by this time tomorrow. I wondered which 5 were Batman and what their secrets were. You couldn't tell by looking. That was the point. Molly and I were shuffling back toward my house when I noticed there was a silver Porsche parked on my street. To say that was unusual is a ridiculous understatement. This was a right trash lane. One house without a front door, another sealed shut with yellow police tape. My little bungalow had my 1998 Ford Bronco parked in the front. Sitting in the driveways of the next 3 houses was a 1985 Pontiac Fiero, a 95 Geo Tracker, and a 2004 PT Cruiser Woody. At least my property taxes were low. The Porsche was crouched low along the gravel shoulder in front of the doorless house. I thought was abandoned. 3 doors down from mine, the gleaming machine looked like it had been warped right here, off a showroom floor. Even the tires looked scrubbed down to a pure layer of factory rubber. I made it to the house and scanned around the yard. Nothing unusual. I was going to have to clean those gutters soon. The gigantic tree back there was dying, and every leaf dropped by the first week of October. The leaves were ankle deep, but I knew they'd actually blown to my neighbor's yard. The old guy who lived there seemed to like doing yard work, so I think that worked out for everybody. I let the dog poop in the yard and let myself in the back door. I passed into the living room, and there was some freaking guy sitting there. He sat in my tattered recliner, making himself right at home, probably 40 or so years old, dark hair with a little gray at the temples, about 3 days' growth of beard stubble that followed an angular jawline. He had a chin butt. He wore a leather jacket that had been manufactured specifically to look worn and faded right off the rack, over a black button shirt that sat open at the collar and the top 3 buttons undone. He wore jeans and cowboy boots, legs crossed casually. He looked like he had been clipped out of a catalog, and I immediately knew this was the owner of the Porsche. I said, "I think you wandered into the wrong house, buddy." He did exactly what I knew he was going to do, which was to reach into his inside pocket and pull out a little leather ID wallet. He flipped it open. "Good morning, Mr. Wong. I'm Detective Lance Falconer. You and I are going to have a talk." 5 hours prior to outbreak. Molly went right to the stranger in my living room. He scratched her behind the ears, then she curled up at his feet. "Pretty dog. How long have you had her?" I hesitated, thinking at first this question was some kind of trap. He was a cop, after all. Then I decided that it was silly, and that he was just trying to be polite. Then I realized his being polite was itself a method of getting me relaxed and accustomed to answering his questions, and that, in fact, it was part of a trap. "She's my girlfriend's dog. She likes to bite people in the crotch, out of nowhere. You know, it's almost 4 in the morning. Lance Falconer glanced over at a framed picture on top of my television. It was a picture of me, looking chubby and pale, and my hair looking like it was being blown around in a hurricane, standing behind Amy with my arms wrapped around her, looking over her, her mop of red hair under my chin. She wore glasses and a huge smile. I wore the expression of a man worried that a stranger was about to steal my camera. "That your girl?" "Yeah, we're engaged." "She live here?" "She's away at school, learning to be a programmer." "What's this about?" "Can I ask what happened to her hand?" The guy was good. Amy's normal right hand was visible in the picture, holding a $5 stuffed elephant she had won at a carnival game using only $36 worth of tickets. Her left arm hung down almost out of frame, but if you were observant, down at the very edge of the photo you could see a little sliver of blue sky where the arm ended at the wrist. "She lost it in a car accident years ago." "Did you go to see her? Is that where you've been tonight?" "No." "Where'd you go?" "Burrito stand." "What did you do, break in?" "Door was unlocked. I had reason to think you'd been the victim of a violent crime, so I let myself in." "I'm pretty sure you can't do that, detective." "I'll give you a phone number where you can call to complain. I have my own entry on the voicemail tree. Your friend had some concern that maybe Frankie Burgess had come after you. You know, the guy who attacked 20 people at the hospital yesterday. Then I asked the local cops if anybody had talked to you yet, and was surprised to find nobody had. In fact, around the police station, any mention of your name just yields awkward silence." "Well, as you can see, I'm fine. That door you came in works as an exit, too." A moment of your time, please. You understand we're in the middle of the biggest manhunt the state has ever seen. I don't see a whole lot of chance Frankie is still drawing breath, but you can imagine why we'd like to find him and put everyone's fears to rest. Why aren't you out helping then? I had to make sure he wasn't here, didn't I? Well, you're free to have a look around. Thank you, I did. He was here, wasn't he? Yesterday. Yeah. Right before he started shooting and biting people at the hospital. Just minutes before, in fact. Yeah. And he was acting strange at all? I could feel my face getting hot, the heat radiating up from my jawbone, starting to feel cornered. Maybe you should have said Frankie was never here. No, he wasn't ranting or anything. He didn't say much. He was responding to a call from a neighbor saying you were making lots of noise and screaming. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't all that. There was a thing in my house. It woke me up, bit me. A thing? It was a squirrel or a raccoon or something. When Officer Burgess left here, he seemed normal. Yeah, like I said. Just told me to be careful. He was more worried about me than anything. You and your friend John didn't drive Frankie to the hospital because 8 witnesses saw you, and they got you on a security camera, and your friend talked to a member of the staff saying Frankie had some kind of seizure, and he talked to a news crew on camera and said that Frankie was infected with a tiny alien parasite. Oh, right. John is weird, you know? Drug problem. But you say Frankie seemed normal when he left? I mean, he was normal when he walked out. It was out by his car he started having problems. We loaded him in his car and drove him to the hospital. Nothing led up to the seizure? No strange behavior? No tics or spasms or words not making sense? No, he seemed fine. You know, he didn't seem like he was on drugs or anything. What was in his throat? I was taken aback. I had been looking around the room, avoiding the detective's eyes, but when he said that, my attention snapped right to him. He noticed. What do you mean? Your friend John. He told the staff to check Frankie's throat. Yeah. I don't know. When he started having his seizure or whatever it was, he started grabbing at his throat like he was choking. Had he been eating something? No. Smoking a big cigar, maybe. Got surprised and swallowed it. Maybe he had a wad of chewing tobacco. I don't know. We were just trying to help. What are you hiding? Nothing! I almost screamed it. I gathered myself and said, I'm just freaked out about this thing, like everybody. And now you're here accusing me, and I had nothing to do with it. Have you heard of the Leonard Farmhouse case? No. Wait. Was that the guy that was kidnapping women and performing surgery on them in his basement up in Chicago? That's right. Well, I caught Farmhand. He had an IQ of 175, but I caught him. And do you know why? Because I got the same room with him. That's all it took. See, I have an internal bullshit sensor that has yet to be beaten. And every time you open your mouth, Wong, all the lights start blinking red, and smoke starts whistling out. Falconer rose from his chair. He was a good 4 inches taller than me, though part of that was cowboy boot. He continued, Here's my theory, as it stands right now. I think you knew Frankie somehow before all this, you and your friend, and I think you had something to do with his going apeshit. Well, that's your opinion, I said lamely. Seriously, Frankie and I didn't know each other. I hadn't seen him in 6 or 7 years, probably since high school. And how exactly do you think I went about driving Frankie crazy? Mind control? That's right. Have fun connecting these dots, asshole. Stick your hand in this hole and you'll draw back a bloody stump. Maybe he wasn't a friend. Maybe he was a fan. I don't have fans, detective. I work at a video store. John does. He has a band. Ask him. I did. I've been asking him things for a couple hours now. So you guys believe this town is haunted? I sighed. No. Really? You and John don't talk about this? Because he's full of crazy stories. We're not crazy. I'm not, anyway. What's Cyprexa? What? You have it in your medicine cabinet. Oh, yeah, that was nothing. Just stress. I'm seeing somebody about it. And that guy you shot with a bow and arrow because you thought he was a monster? A crossbow. It was a misunderstanding. The guys down at the station hearing them talk about you and your friend, they think you're in some kind of a cult. They say 3 neighbors moved away in the last year alone because they were scared of you. You were the last guy to see Frankie before his episode, and everybody had some bullshit excuse for why you hadn't been interviewed yet. Like they're scared of you. People are stupid. You know, at the hospital, Frankie tore out an old woman's throat with his teeth. I felt myself take an unconscious step back toward the door. This guy was breathing all my air. Is that right? That's horrible. He was also heard speaking another language. I didn't answer. So, here's my theory, Wong. My theory is that the last night wasn't Frankie's first visit out here. I think he's a part of your little cult following. I think you and your friend scrambled his brain, probably slipped him a drug, and told him to give him magic powers or whatever it is you're into, and I think he hurt a whole bunch of people because of it. You claim to have a top-notch bullshit detective? Then you let that theory come out of your mouth? That's a couple of local dumbasses have mind control powers. I kind of want you to charge me with that. The trial would be hilarious. He showed me the most unsettling smile I've ever seen and said, I've enjoyed this conversation. I mean that. You've given me what I love most, a puzzle. See, I get bored real easy. Most cases put me to sleep. Everybody knows who it is. The rest is just a grind, trying to fill a file cabinet with evidence for the prosecutor to take to trial. But now, I'm like a kid a week before Christmas, rattling gifts under the tree to find out what's inside. I just rattled yours, and boy, there's something cool in here. He opened the front door. A business card appeared in his hand. Call me if you decide you want to talk more about this and save us both some time. Otherwise, I'll be seeing you around. When I heard the Porsche growl past the house 10 minutes later, I was still standing in my living room, staring at the door the detective had passed through. I was sweating like a bottle of beer at the beach. I dug out my phone, dialed John. Voicemail. 2 hours prior to outbreak. It wasn't the longest night of my life, but it was way up there. I've had my share of terrified, sleepless nights, and I've developed a pretty good survival system, involving nothing more than mental alertness exercises, positive thinking, and amphetamines. Don't worry, I have a prescription, or at least the guy who sold them to me did. I was in for a brutal crash later, but that was Day David's problem. Night David was trying to stay alive, and it worked. I was out on my porch when shafts of light started burning through the trees in my front yard, and I almost cried at the sight of it. It was the first time I could remember that I had seen 2 consecutive sunrises. Ironically, at that point I was too jacked up to sleep, and not just from the orange capsules that were dissolving in my system. I had come up with a plan of action during my long wait. First, get the shit out of my tool shed and dump it somewhere. Maybe in the river, then get out of town for a while. Let all this blow over. Where would I go? Didn't matter. I could do anything. Hitchhike to San Francisco and live on the beach, join the circus. The where wasn't important. I had been in a rut. That's what I realized. I needed to shake things up, lose this weight, learn karate. Wait, I did accidentally take 4 of those pills instead of 2. Wow. It seemed like a good time for a shower. My laundry basket was still overturned. I lifted it up a few inches and stuffed all the clothes I was wearing under there. I made my way into the bathroom. Molly barked. She was staring at the door and heard a car pull up. I heard credence, and a look through the curtains revealed John's old Cadillac. Thank Christ. Footsteps on the porch. I yelled, "Don't open the door yet. I'm naked. Give me 1 minute." The door opened behind me. I turned and was face to face with Frankie Burgess. Frankie opened his mouth. A thin stream of liquid squirted out as a greeting. I had the thought to throw up an arm to shield my face from whatever it was, but before the muscles could twitch into action, there was a bang and a bluish flash. It hit me in the back. I stared at the ceiling, ears ringing, vaguely realizing that the stuff Frankie spat had combusted in mid-air with enough force to knock me on my ass. I blinked, dazed. Frankie stepped over me. He was carrying what looked like several red and white grocery bags on each arm. He went into the bedroom. From the floor, I saw the Cadillac outside my open front door and had time to make the conscious decision to race out there and drive naked across America before I felt the forearm close around my neck. Frankie, now with the strength of several Frankies, yanked me to my feet and marched me toward the bedroom. Molly barked. She bounded towards us, past us, out the door, into the yard, into the distance, barking the whole way. She was not going to get help. I could see into the bedroom now, but couldn't make sense of what was there. There were 4 huge, white, bleeding dead birds on my bed. Chickens? Turkeys? I was trying to puzzle through the situation. Were these birds for me, like a gift or an offering? They were laid out and dripping blood on my sheets, like some Aztec sacrifice on an altar. I said, thank you for the turkeys, Frankie. Is your name still Frankie? Shut up. Frankie's voice was muffled, like he was talking around a mouthful of food. He held me in place, both of us watching the bed intently for... what? Frankie's arm, the broken one, felt weird. Something long and dry snaking around my torso. I didn't look down. Movement on my bed. The sheet was rippling, like somebody had poked their fingers up from under the mattress and was wiggling them. Several somebodies. Dozens of fingers. I heard fabric rip. A slit formed in the sheet, and a tiny version of one of those spiders no more than 2 inches long crawled out. It went right for the nearest turkey. It was quickly joined by another, and another. Within seconds, my bed was writhing with dozens of the spider larvae, like maggots on a slab of meat. With every ounce of strength and adrenaline and terror I could muster, I twisted out of Frankie's grasp and spun toward the door. I made it into the living room before Frankie tackled me. I twisted around from a position flat on my back and punched him in the face as hard as I could. It felt like I broke my hand. He shrugged it off and pinned my arms, his legs straddling my chest. I looked right into his eyes and saw the gaping stare of a terrified young man. He was hissing something at me, a whisper from deep in his throat. He leaned his face down close to mine. I couldn't make out the words. They were just choking sounds like an old man on a respirator. He leaned close. I could smell his breath. "They're everywhere," he hissed. "Do you understand me? They're everywhere." "Frankie, can you hear me? Get off me." Then I saw it. When Frankie opened his mouth, I was looking at the spider. Its tongue, where Frankie's mouth used to be, behind his teeth. It had simply taken over the lower half of his skull. I pictured the way its legs was able to glue itself to my shoulder and shudder. The spider was a part of Frankie now. Maybe the spider was Frankie at this point. Running footsteps on the porch. Frankie and I both looked and saw John hurl himself through the front door. I screamed, "John, it's a breeder!" John didn't stop. He hurdled the coffee table while screaming, "Your key! I need your shed key!" Shed key? What was he doing, borrowing my lawnmower? "Listen," Frankie hissed, focusing back on me. I realized he was trying to talk through his parasite and struggling to do it. "They're everywhere. It could be anyone. Do you get it? Anyone." Frankie screamed. A long, segmented thing came out from his mouth. Out from the parasite hiding within. It looked like a black earworm, but longer, with a little spike on the end like a scorpion's tail. I was expecting the thing to come down and sting me or something. Instead, it curled up towards Frankie's own eye. Frankie screamed again. The worm thing plunged into his eyeball. I heard a small engine rev to life from outside the house. I had the crazy thought that I'd see John racing around the house with my lawnmower, screaming, "Thanks for letting me borrow this," before throwing it in his car and driving off. Blood dripped down on me from Frankie's punctured eye. His hands found their way to my face and throat, clawing at me mindlessly, fingers trying to pry open my mouth. The engine sound was in the house now, deafening. A shadow fell over us. John. Something in his hands. Something loud. The engine sound revved to a mechanical scream, then bogged down as if with effort. There was a sound like carrots in a blender. Wetness rained down on me. The blurred metal teeth of a chainsaw ripped through Frankie's neck. John worked the machine down, rocking it back and forth as it tore through spine and muscle and tendons. His hands streaked with red. Frankie's head fell free from his shoulders, his wet hair bonking me in the face. The rest of his body held itself above me for a few seconds, then pounded down on me with dead weight that knocked the air from my lungs. The saw shut off, and I could hear John yelling questions at me. His hand appeared on Frankie's shoulder, and together we rolled the corpse off me. I sprang to my feet, looked down at my body in disgust. I looked like an infant somebody had inexplicably taken to an all-you-can-eat rib night. John said, "You, all right?" I sprinted to the bedroom door and slammed it shut. I struggled to catch my breath and said, "My bedroom! It's infested with baby versions of the spider things. They're all over my bed eating turkey. My bed, John! They were in my bed. Larvae! This whole time! We've got to do something." "Did they eat your clothes?" "Listen, the army has quarantined the hospital, but it's not doing any good because the spiders are out. They're here. Here, John! What are we going to do? If we let just one of those things out into the world..." "Okay, first of all, Wait, where's the head?" We both looked down at Frankie's headless corpse, now laying in the living room on a spreading pool of blood. There was no head. What the... "Look! Shit!" Frankie's head was making a run for it. The spider's legs were protruding from the severed neck, and they were scurrying the head through the open front door. I ran, following the crawling head out onto the porch. I stomped on the head with my bare foot, pinning it to the welcome mat. I started to yell to John to get the chainsaw when the asshole head bit my foot. I yanked the foot free from Frankie's teeth, then reared back with my other foot and kicked the head so hard I felt like it broke 4 toes. The head sailed 10 feet through the air until it bounced off the windshield of Detective Lance Falconer's Porsche, which had chosen that moment to pull into the driveway. The head left a pink smear on his windshield, but then rolled off of his hood and back onto my feet. I grabbed it in both hands, teeth facing away from me so it couldn't bite my dick off. A hugely confused Falconer emerged from the car to the sight of me standing naked in my driveway, covered in blood, covering my crotch with a severed head. I'm David Wong, and I'm here with a special message about amphetamines. Put it down! Falconer's gun was out. I said, 1 minute. I ran back inside, made it to the bedroom, opened the door, threw the head inside, and slammed the door shut again. My brief glimpse of the room revealed the hatchlings had made it halfway across the floor. I ran into the bathroom, grabbed 2 towels, and stuffed them under the door. That wouldn't hold long. Asshole! Put your hands up now! Falconer came inside, gun still trained on me. I said, okay, calm down. There's good news and bad news. The good news is we found Frankie. The bad news is we've got bigger problems. Wait, interjected John from behind the detective. You're Lance Falconer. Shut up or I will shoot you in the face. That was driving me nuts all night. You're the detective who caught Father's Day killer, right? Didn't you throw him out of a helicopter? Falconer didn't answer. John said to me, he's famous. I saw this whole thing about him on A&E. Shut the fuck up. Did you kill Frankie? John said, it was self-defense. He stole my car, he drove it here, and I had to walk all the way from the police station. Got here just in time. He was raping Dave when I walked in. He wasn't. Shut up. Both of you. You're coming with me. To me, he said, put some pants on. Fuck you, this is my house, I make the rules. You take your clothes off. John, get the twister mat. Falconer asked, are you high? A little. What's in the room? Why are you sealing it up? John, thinking quickly, said, infection. Frankie had it. It's the reason they're quarantining the hospital. It's like a virus that... Stop, you're lying. To me, he said, what's in the room? Look, I respect your bullshit detector. Everything that I'm about to say is true. Read it in my eyes. There are factors at work that you would not understand that we do not have time to explain. There is nothing more you can do here, detective, other than to get all out of our way. You came here to find a man. You found him. He's lying at your feet. Now go home. Falconer gave me a hard look. He lowered his gun, strode past me, and threw open the bedroom door. His eyes went right to the bed. What he saw were 4 bloody turkeys. No, that wasn't right. What he saw were the 4 bloody turkey skeletons lying on my bed among piles of feathers. The larvae had all but stripped them clean within minutes. What I saw, but Falconer did not, was that the spiders were now in the carpet, on the walls, crawling around the glass of the bedroom window. They were growing at an impossible rate, some already the size of a fist. I felt a single drop of sweat fall down the back of my neck, trickling down my spine. I took a reflexive step back. One of the spiders crawled across Falconer's shoe. He wouldn't have noticed if he'd been looking directly at it. What is in there? Some kind of ritual? Voodoo bullshit? Trying to summon a ghost or demon or whatever you guys do? No, I told you, detective, you're not going to solve this one. Sure, I understand. He holstered his gun. Then in a blur, he grabbed my arm, spun me around, and slammed me against the doorframe of the bedroom. He got my right arm right back behind my back, and paint exploded down my shoulder, the ligaments twisting around bone. I screamed. To John, Falconer shouted, back! Cold steel on my right wrist. Handcuffs. Falconer pushed me into the bedroom. He shoved me to my knees among the newborn spiders. I heard John shout, no, no, but Falconer spun and put his gun on him. With his free hand, he looped the handcuff chain around the metal frame of the bed and snapped the remaining cuff around my other wrist. I was on my bare knees, hands chained around the bed, and I could feel itchy spider legs crawling up one of my thighs, over my feet. Falconer stood, held his gun on John, and said, now I'm not unlocking that until you've explained everything. 100 minutes prior to outbreak. Amy peed a lot when she got tense. A nervous bladder and a 3-hour-long bus ride didn't make for a great combination, but worrying wasn't something she could just turn off. Her roommate at school had taught her some Tai Chi, but that wasn't the sort of thing you could do on a bus without being asked to leave. She didn't get David or John on the phone, and that was weird. Really weird. David always picked up unless he was in the shower or his phone was dead, and she had been trying since early in the morning. And John, free spirit that he was, had Amy on his list of must-answer calls. He knew she didn't call him unless it was a big deal, or she couldn't raise David. She never abused this privilege. David had sounded so ominous the night before, getting in one of his moods where he thinks the whole world depends on him and that he's about to let everyone down. It was Amy's job to take his mind off it. Then he got like that, and it usually wasn't all that hard. He was a guy, after all, a guy with a thing for red underpants, but nothing was helping this time, and Amy was once again frustrated by the distance. David needed her, and there were things you just couldn't do over the phone or webcam. The school was only 130 miles away, but she didn't drive, and quite frankly, David couldn't afford to make the trip. Not just because of the $60 in gas he burned every time, but the time missed at work. That's why she had bought a Greyhound ticket within 5 minutes of getting off the phone with him the day before. From the window seat on the bus, she dialed him again. With her phone to her ear, she stared out at the trees zipping by, imagining a little running man out there trying to keep up with the bus, jumping over obstacles as they flew past. 4 rings, then voicemail. Again. She tried hard not to be clinging. She had been on the other end of that with her last boyfriend, a guy who had never touched a girl before and therefore thought if she was cut open, a gush of rainbows and unicorns would spill out. Calling 5 times a day, showing up unannounced, acting like one of those sleazy photographers who follow celebrities around. It was no fun, and David, more than most people, demanded distance. He was the type to reflexively push other people away, never figuring out that the gnawing feeling inside him is what the rest of us call loneliness. You have to ease people out of that. It takes time. But, with David's history, she had earned the right to assume the worst when she didn't hear from him. It had come to the worst more than once. She felt her bladder swelling. Where was her body getting the liquid from? She hadn't drank anything since breakfast. She wondered how long it would take until the next rest stop. The bus had a bathroom, but it was gross. Really gross. Like on a medical level. It looked like there hadn't been cleaned since the Bush administration, and there were probably things crawling on the toilet seats that she didn't want anywhere near her private parts. Ah. 90 minutes prior to outbreak. Alien spiders crawled toward my balls. I felt one on my neck and shook it off with a shrug. I thought I had another one in my hair. One got into my armpit, and I crushed it against my ribs with my bicep. I tried to squash them with my knees. Falconer must have thought I was having a seizure. John tried to construct an argument to dissuade Falconer, saying, shit, fuck, detective, no, this is bad. Trying to control my voice, I said, listen, Frankie had something inside him that took over his brain. It laid eggs, they hatched, they're in here, I paused to shake a spider off my ear, like a dog flinging water off a bath. They're crawling around, but you can't see them. Because they're invisible, right? Yes, they, One of them bit my ear. I squished it with my shoulder. Something crashed behind me. There was a scuffle and grunts. I looked back and saw John had gone after Falconer. Falconer threw him off, hitting him hard in the nose with an elbow. He pointed his gun at John's face. You're fucking crazy. Both of you. What did you give him? What drug did you give Frankie? God damn it, we're going in circles. They had him in the hospital long enough to get blood. They said so on the news. Did tests show anything? Anything at all? So you understand my confusion. A spider crawled up my neck, over my chin. I tried to push it away, into my mouth. It tried to push its way into my mouth, and I spat and tried to wipe it off by rubbing my face on the bedspread. I couldn't dislodge it. Its tiny legs pushed in past my lips. I bit it. I cut it in half with my front teeth and ground it up with my molars, spitting and gagging on the intense salt taste that made my whole body convulse. One of the spiders crawled off the bed, across the handcuff chain, and onto the underside of my forearm. I started to scrape it off, then stopped. I twisted my body and round to face Falcon and said, "Look at my arm. Watch." "I don't see any." "No, I know you don't. Yet. Wait. Just wait. One of those things, they're like little spiders or bugs. It's sitting right there. It's going to start eating soon, and I'm pretty sure you'll see." Ah! I hissed in a breath and clenched my teeth. The inch-long larva bit down with its tiny mandibles and ripped up a chunk of skin. Holding it with its 2 front legs, it started munching on me. A second later, it repeated the process, tearing with its mandibles, ripping up a tiny patch of tissue, eating, and again. I pressed my eyes shut, trying to block out the pain. The itch of tiny legs on my feet and calves and thigh and ass and back. Tried to escape, to block out the fact that I was being eaten alive by arachnids. For some reason, the only thing I could replace it with was the image of being eaten by tiny clowns. Man, I'm not even sure those were amphetamines. I opened my eyes, and the expression on Falconer's face almost made the whole thing worth it. From his point of view, a tiny strip of skin the width of a pencil was spontaneously vanishing from my arm, leaving a trench of blood and pink fat behind. What did he think? that I had a flesh-eating virus, that John and I were faking the whole thing with horror movie makeup, a part of an elaborate and gruesome prank. I said, if you leave me here, by this afternoon I'll look like those turkeys up there. Wet red bones. They're all over me, and I see at least 3 of them on your pants. There's one on the sleeve of your jacket. If we don't exterminate these fuckers somehow, they'll breed and they'll be everywhere, and nobody will be able to stop them because nobody else can see them. He lowered his gun. Detective, only the 3 of us in this room understand what's happening here. Ah! I growled as the bug took another bite. Hungry little bastard. And only we can stop it. And if you don't help us, then it's just me and John, and we're just a couple of dildos. Please unlock these goddamn handcuffs. Falconer thought about it for what seemed like a day and a half, but was probably just a few seconds. He dug in his jacket pocket for a tiny set of keys, tossed them to John, and nodded in my direction. Instead of unlocking the cuffs, John said, "Hold still," then grabbed a nearby shoe and started slapping my arm with it. Ow! God damn it! The baby spider fell off, and John ground into the carpet with his foot. He went to work on the cuffs and the tiny key and was able to unlock them after only 137 or so tries. I hurriedly grabbed some khaki pants and a wet t-shirt I found draped over a nearby chair and flew from the room. We slammed the door and crammed the towels under the gap once more. John squashed half a dozen bugs that had escaped into the hall and cleaned off the ones we found crawling on Falconer. I yanked on the clothes and kept right on walking out the door. With all of us standing in the yard, John said to me, "All right, get everything you care about out of this house. I'll get my lighter. Do you know what your insurance policy says about intentional fires?" Falconer said, "Shut up. Don't do anything. Let me think." He dug a phone from his pocket. "I'm going to let you on a secret. The whole world is not against you. We've got help in this town. Pros who actually get paid to worry about public safety. I've got a Fed hotline number that they can give us. I dial it and describe what I've seen here, and they'll have this place surrounded and locked down in 10 minutes. I'll tell them what you told me. We'll all figure it out like professionals. I'm telling you, there's a whole non-white trash world out there, fellas." Studying the ragged gouge in my forearm, I said, "You still don't fully understand the situation, Detective. There's a reason we didn't just do that from the start. There are, let's just say, some powerful people who not only know what's going on in this town, but kind of get off on it." "What we're saying," added John, "is that the whole world is in fact, against us." I said, "But either way, I'm going to go gather up my stuff. I'm obviously not staying in this infested shithole." To John, "You got room in your trunk, right?" "Yep. How about we go up to the burrito stand after this?" I was 5 seconds away from saying the same thing. Falconer had turned his attention to his phone call. He was still alert, though. I got the feeling the man was on alert when he was fast asleep. This would be a delicate operation. Studying the floor for any signs of wiggling, I hurried through the house and returned to the yard with my laptop, a garbage bag full of clothes. I tried to pull from the dryer and mostly full bottle of Grey Goose I found in the freezer. I grabbed a handful of dog food from the kitchen in case Molly showed up again. I declared my packing finished and started to leave, then felt like I was slapping myself when I realized what I had almost forgotten. On the wall of my living room was one contribution Amy had made to the decor, a velvet Jesus painting that looked like it had been copied from an airbrush job in the back of a van, in the dark. It belonged to her parents, who had probably bought it off of some roadside stand in New Mexico. Amy's parents were gone, however, and this terrible painting was one of the only things she'd kept from their old house. I grabbed it off the wall and took one last look around. The rest of my stuff could pretty much go. Outside, Falconer was putting away his phone, and I said to him, "Come around back. I need to show you something in the tool shed." "What is it?" "Well, I don't know what it is. That's the point. I think you need to see it before the feds get here, though." To John, I said, "Can you put my stuff in your trunk? I want to show him the box." John dug out his keys and started unlocking his trunk. I let Falconer around the yard to the still open shed. I gestured toward the green box on the gravel floor at those weird hieroglyphic symbols across the front. "Pretty weird, huh? Found it." "And?" "It can't be opened. Not by you, not by me. We've only had it open once, and what's in there is weird as shit." "Okay, well, I'll show it to the feds when they get here." From the shelf, Elmo said, 8 inches erect." "But I'm not clear how this is relevant to..." Falconer stopped, probably because, like me, he smelled smoke. He gave me a look that you could have made Cancer apologize, then ran like hell. Falconer rounded the house in time to see John emerging from the front door with his lighter, a Vietnam-era flamethrower he had bought off eBay. Completely legal, by the way. Behind him, flames were turning the rest of my worldly possessions into smoke and ash. Falconer clenched his jaw and said, "Oh, you stupid white-dress fucks, what have you done?" I said, "We've taken care of the problem, is what we've done. Same as always. There was nothing for the cops to do here, or the National Guard, or anybody else." Sirens rose up in the background. I've got to say, nobody reacts faster than the fire department. Falconer grabbed me, spun me around, and for the second time slapped on handcuffs. I could not have cared less. I felt relief for the first time in 2 days. All-consuming flames roared through the infested house, and the whole ordeal was finally over. Frankie and the spider larva would burn, and there would be no outbreak. And that's where we're going to end it today. But just so you know, the next section, or chapter, starts with 10 minutes prior to outbreak. So here we are. Get something. I should pull out a couple magic cards to use as bookmarks. Alright. I want to thank everyone for joining me. I hope you had a good time with a late night stream. For those of you who should be asleep, I hope you're asleep. For those of you who shouldn't be asleep, I hope you're asleep. We're going to give somebody a quick raid, though. Let me... Oh, was I under like a different chat menu? Maybe that's why I wasn't doing it. I don't know. I still really wish it had just let me ban them immediately. Let's... Oh my god, there's hardly anyone on. Let's drop in on Dieriku. They are an artist. If I remember right, they're Italian. They made their own model. Their artwork is fantastic. They're really good. And there's that. They're working on a Neanders model. Let's drop in on them. Okay.
As long as they don't come here.
They might be drunk. I don't know. They are Italian after all. Boom! Anyway, I can say that because I have Italian friends. Anyway. Sorry. Alright. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me. I want to thank Neo Torchwick and Indigo Radio for the raids. I didn't do an announcement for this one. I figured most people would either be asleep, going to sleep, or looking for something that was a little more entertaining. So, thank you for joining me. We're going to drop in on Dieriku. I hope you have a wonderful night or morning, depending on where you are, or day, depending on where you are. And I'll see you the next time you dial in for Mac. This Wednesday will probably be my day off from anything. I need to start looking for work again, so I need to do that tonight. And then Thursday, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, have a good night. Thanks again.
Good. Pet. Back to pet. Smilfy saved lives. You do stuff his current? No, I have not. I think right now she's using a nanoless model. Rigged by art gun, correct? Very nice. Very nice. Is very nice. Is nice indeed. I preach that one day I'll get to them. But I would work hard. I don't pray. I work. To work harder, Chadlin. Wanna get that bread? You want it? You want that bread? Thank you, Radio. Welcome. Thank you for 2 months. Josuke, hello, darling. What's up?